Hello, my fellow Alaskans. How are we all doing on this bright and beautiful Saturday afternoon? I am here in Anchorage, Alaska at Awaken Church in Anchorage, just behind the peanut farm. Please come on by and see what is going on. We're here to hear today from Dr. Douglas Frank, and he is the one that is going to explain to us about our integrity in our elections and what we can do. Are you awake, fellow Alaskans, in our current election here in the in Anchorage, where they just now having a runoff between Bronson and La France, and you can see that the mail-in ballot system has a lot of questionable things going on with it, like why were there so many undeliverable or not received or not cast ballots? I mean, 20,000, if I heard the number right. It is just absolutely unbelievable. And that this is what the mail-in system, people in other states receiving ballots just because they were on the system, they registered through ERIC somewhere else, yet they're still in the system because they're not being removed when they leave state or if they pass away. There's many other circumstances out there that can cause elections to have problems. And now I'm just going to go ahead and pop this off real quick. They should be starting here real soon. There we go. Nice to see you guys all out there on this beautiful day. We appreciate you guys at this time. If you could take a moment, like and share this video. You can find it on all of your favorite channels if you like to: YouTube, Twitter, X, Facebook, Rumble. You can even go to our website at Politadick.com and watch it live. It is a portable player, so you can sit there and surf all your other channels that you want to and still continue to watch the video that is being put out here today. We are so glad that you can be here with us today. And again, like and share. Are you awake, Alaskans? Our election cycle, our election system has many questionable things going on with it. The Mat-Su Valley took action in their own personal elections and took back control, paper ballots, hand counting the election results, knowing them the night that the election is over with, not waiting for weeks or months later to find out results. Again, thank you guys all for being here. Please like and share, and they're about ready to begin here, so I'm going to go ahead and flip around and flip microphones, and thank you guys once again, and we'll see you later.
So we're going to start with location. On the other side of it, I'd like to ask Robert if you would please give the invocation for us.
Thank you. Dear Heavenly Father, we're here from our hearts and here from our minds. We're here to learn about your ways as they apply to this force of evil in front of us. And we're here to fulfill our duty as citizens in your kingdom, to resist evil and to learn about how to do this. We're thankful for you for a relationship with others and relationship with you. And you are a God that answers prayer. And right now, we're giving you permission to counsel us as we receive these ideas from Dr. Frank. And we're so thankful. This morning we had a shower and a drain, children and relationships and clean air. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And it's in Yeshua's Jesus' name that we declare we're here for your glory. Amen.
I want to start by thanking Pastor Levi for letting us have the event here today. I know he just had to leave, but if you do get a chance to see him, please pass on a word of thanks. And there's going to be,
thank you, brother.
All right, thank you very much, Pastor. And I believe there's going to be a basket by the door. If you walk in the side door here, that goes to the church. If you'd like to make a donation, that'd be always appreciated. We also have Theo. Thank you very much for helping organize the event. Both Theo and Dave from Prosper America. And Robert from AMAC are the co-sponsors. They've helped facilitate some of the events today. And it was my privilege to just drive the doctor from Wasilla down here to the municipality early this morning. Had a great conversation. There was, how many of you are familiar with Richard Von Brunt? Is that a name anyone's familiar with? Von Brunt.
Von Brunt.
Yes, so Richard was pastor in Romania, and he was there during the time when the Congress took over. And he spent 13 years in prison as a Christian pastor. He wrote the book Tortured for Christ. You might have seen that. And, it's interesting how, and that was not the only time he was in prison, but the story of how he got into prison, I think, is worth sharing based on the time and era in which we live. When the communists took over in Romania, they required all of the Christian pastors to assemble. We got together in the stadium, and thousands upon thousands of Christian pastors from all over the country. And they not only had them required to be there and listen to what they were saying, but also there was a point in the event where they required all of the Christian pastors to go up on stage and get in front of the microphone and say something. And you can imagine what they were supposed to say. And nearly all of them did. They got up to the microphone and they talked about how great communism is, how it's wonderful, how it's the future for the country of Romania, and so forth and so on. And as this was unfolding, Richard was still sitting in the seats, and his wife Sabina was next to him. And he was talking with her about what would happen when he got up to the microphone. And he said, if I get up there and I speak the truth, then you're not likely to have a husband after that. And she turned to him and she said, better not to have a husband than to be married to a coward. And when he got up, he spoke the truth. And he spoke about the gospel of Christ. And he spoke about things that needed to be said that no one was saying. And he ended up in prison for 13 years, one time and other times as well. And that is the kind of courage that we need today. When we are surrounded by an ocean of lies. And the evil in our midst can only continue and exist when it is surrounded and defended by lies that are not being countered, that are not being exposed. And there are many other examples of that, many of which come to mind when I get a chance to see Dr. Frank. He is one of those individuals who is speaking the truth. And he is weathering the storm of what happens when you get up to the microphone and you say the things that need to be said, that they don't want said. And he can tell you a little bit about what that means for him and his wife, who of course was very supportive and allowing him to be here with us today. And he goes weeks and weeks at a time without being home, just so we can give the kind of talks that he's giving here today in almost every other state in the country. And he's been doing that for 3 years now. It's quite a sacrifice. So I thank Dr. Frank very much for coming here.
Honor.
This is his second time back to Alaska. We're glad to have him. We're looking forward to a third time as well. But between now and then, there's some work that we have to do so that he can help us with our challenges in Alaska, which are unique and I would say uniquely troublesome, but also when they are as bad as they are here in Alaska, there is a lot of room for improvement. And we can take heart with that because there are some things that we can do now today to change that, and Dr. Frank's going to talk about that. So thank you very much.
All right.
If you haven't signed in, please do so. I'll pass this around. And Dr. Frank is he doesn't have a job right now because, well, I'm sure he'll share that with you with his experiences. The people that seem to stand up have a little more financial difficulty than we normally do because.
Oh, I'm fine, don't worry.
Anyway, I'm going to pass this
God's
around.
taking good care of it.
Yeah, just to kind of help them out. Of course, airline tickets and stuff. And there's a sign-up sheet.
All right. but you can hear me okay? Good to be with you. Yeah, I don't work for money anymore. That's the better way to describe that. I remember telling my wife in 2020, after I was invited by the state of Pennsylvania to work on their elections, I was telling my wife, honey, I'm going to set aside my income for 6 months and we're going to save the country, and then I'll resume. And I remember last Christmas sitting down with Donna and we were looking at the family budget, and she said, how much longer is this going to last? And I said, I think it's the rest of my career. Because what I discovered as I began this work around the country is we are in way, way worse shape than I ever dreamed. I had no idea, and I told her, I think this is going to be the balance of my career. I think I'm going to probably spend the rest of my life working on this. And she looked at me dead in the eye, my wife of 42 years, and she said, that's okay, honey, it's your calling. That's my wife. That's a good wife. And I feel like I've been prepared for this time. My kids are grown, 26, 24, 22. My oldest daughter, Nellie, has Down syndrome, so she's at home forever with us. So Donna isn't alone. And my youngest son, Derek, is 21, and he's a church musician, and they don't make a lot of money. And so he's still at home, but he helps take care of Nellie when Donna's at work. So people say, how do you afford to do this? The answer is, I don't have a mortgage. I don't have a car payment. My wife works. Okay, that's how I afford to do this. And that's why they pass the hat for me everywhere I go, because that helps pay for my plane tickets and whatnot. But I'm happy to do that. Happy to be here. Happy to be here a second time. I started out this tour at your capital, and I met with a couple of your legislators, in particular Dave Eastman, who I just want to. So hot. Can you turn it down just a little bit? It's too hot. It's like I'm holding it further and further away from me. Yeah. Very good. That's much better. Thank you. So I met with Dave Eastman, and he is, I got to just tell you flat out, he's one of my personal heroes. As I've been traveling the country, I've been in 48 states now, 800 counties and boroughs, teaching people how to fix their elections. And as I travel the country, I've learned a couple of things. There's a pattern to this. One of the patterns is that as I go and talk with legislatures, each legislature seems to have one or two patriots in it, and that's it. One or two people that are willing to stand for the truth, and the rest are not willing to stand for the truth. And the ones who are willing to stand pay a price. And I know, Dave, you're paying a price. Yesterday, you're being attacked with lawfare. He has these ethics charges constantly being brought against him, yet he's one of the most ethical guys I know. Okay? Yeah. It's the other legislators that are meeting in the weekends with young girls that are being brought in by the mafia, not you. Right? I mean, there's bad stuff happening in your state, not by him. He's the one who's saying we shouldn't tolerate this anymore, so we should clean it up. So thank you for your kind introduction. And I'm going to put on a minute ago I showed my content, my social media stuff. I'm going to put on my social media some links to his fundraising page. He has huge amounts of expenses because of the lawfare, all the attorney's fees and court fees he has to pay. Please donate to him. Please help him. I have about 100,000 followers or so, something like that around the country, and I'm going to ask them all to give him $20, and hopefully that'll help. We'll see. You know, if you got a couple of thousand people respond, that'll be good. It'll go a long way, huh? Anyway, so he's a real deal. Okay, so anyway, I met with some of the legislators. I was in Kenai again. I was in Fairbanks, and the teams are in different states of progress. And like Dave said, this is my second trip here. When I started this work in 2021, I thought incorrectly that I could go into a state, I could bring evidence of fraud, meet with your legislators, meet with your secretaries of state, in your case, lieutenant governor, and show them the fraud, and they would address it, and I would save the country. That's how naive I was in 2020. I thought we had at least some honest legislators and secretaries of state and whatnot, and I spent most of 2021 doing that, bringing evidence. And so that was kind of my 2021 year, and I have more stories about that. I guess let me tell you one from that. It's a relevant, important story for you to understand. So Mr. Lindell made a documentary about my work in March of 2021. It's called Scientific Proof. I'll show you that a minute from now. It's his second documentary. And he and I are good friends after that. And for about 6 weeks straight, we rode together around the country in his very cool jet. He's got a cool jet. And we'd go state to state, and we would meet with attorneys generals. And there were 4 of us on the team. Mike would get up, and he would show the attorney generals the game plan that we were following. And then I would get up, and I would summarize all the fraud we already knew about in that particular state. And then a third person was our legal person, Kurt Olson, and he would describe the legal case that we were presenting to the Supreme Court. And then the 4th person was our white hat hacker. He would hack into the guy's election right in front of his face. He could go into any county, any parish, any borough in the country, and we could manipulate their election right in front of their face. That dynamic group of 4, we did that over and over and over again. We did about 24 states, but we could only get 6 attorneys generals to sign on to our Supreme Court lawsuit. And so this was right, and that just goes to the speed. There aren't a lot of people willing to make a stand. And even the 6 we had, they were pretty limp-kneed about it. They were pretty afraid to make a stand. And so Thursday before Thanksgiving of 2021, we had 6 signatures, and Mr. Lindell said, okay, that's enough. We're going to go. We really only needed 1, but we got 6, that's good. And so Mr. Lindell's a marketer, so he was announcing to the world, next week we're going to be dropping the Supreme Court case for election fraud, and it's going to be absolutely 9-0 once they see the evidence, and that's going to be it. We're going to get our country back. That's the way Mike talks. He's a marketer, right? And he wanted to do it right before Thanksgiving because then he knew everybody would be talking about it over Thanksgiving. He's a marketer. That's the way he thinks. Well, so Thursday we decided 6 is enough. And then we went back to our various tasks we were working on. That weekend, Ronna McDaniels, head of the RNC, called every one of those AGs and told them that if they stayed on that lawsuit, they lose all national support from the Republican Party. Who's our enemy? The Democrats? No. It's in my case, the biggest opposition to my work is the GOP. State by state, the GOP opposes my work everywhere I go. And all I'm trying to do is restore election integrity and bring power back to the people. Maybe that's why the GOP doesn't like me. They don't want the people to have the power. They want to have the power. So anyway, I spent all of 2021 thinking I could save the country that way. I was wrong, and I had to kind of learn that. I'm a scientist. I'm a PhD physicist. And I think that like truth and logic and evidence should convince people. You know, forgive me for being naive, but that's the way I was for that year. I spent all of 2022 then learning how to work with grassroots teams. And I've been reading all these books about grassroots movements. I love Saul Alinsky's book, Rules for Radicals. That is just a brilliant document. And I've been reading all sorts of coaching books about how do grassroots movements succeed. And lately, as I've been reading, I've been saying, well, gee, I just learned that here, and I learned that there. And in other words, I was learning the slow way, but I'm getting faster because I'm teaming up with people like Dave Eastman. People who have a lot of experience in politics, and I'm doing way better these days. So I want to cover that strategy with you. But first, before I cover that strategy with you, I want to tell you what's wrong with your state. And I want to give you a kind of an overall strategy. And here's where I'm coming from. My first trip here was in December, and I joke about it, but I'm serious. This is the pattern I've seen. I've been doing this for over 3 years now. I show up in a place, I show you what's wrong, everybody gets mad. It's like starting a little bonfire. And then I come back 3 months later, and people are like, it's had a chance to sink in, and they're beginning to get organized. And I get them organized into teams, and we get them doing the right kinds of tasks. And then the third time I come back, we're on fire, and that state is on fire. We're making big changes. And that's about a 6-month period of time, I've learned. And I think it's getting a little shorter as we're getting better at doing it, because we're learning the lessons and moving faster. So this is my second time here, and true to form, That's what I found. I came back and there are all these aggravated people from my first visit, but they're not very well organized yet. Is that fair, Dave? It's very fair. But the team in judo was pretty good. They were pretty organized, and I spent all Wednesday afternoon training them 4 hours on what their next steps were. And I'm not going to take you through that training because I don't think you're there yet. But I'm hoping after this meeting you form a team, and then we'll do some training together, and we'll take you to the next steps. That's what I'm hoping will happen. And the reason I say that is not because I'm Mr. God and I know everything. It's because I have a lot of experience doing this now. I've been working all across the country. So my biggest value to you is that I have so much, I've done it wrong so many times, that I know what the right ways are to do, and I will bring you collective wisdom from around the country and speed your progress. That's my biggest value to you. So that's why I'm glad to be here. So let's start talking about Alaska a little bit. Did you see this in the newspaper 2 days ago? Yeah. Here you are in Anchorage. You should know about this. As of 2 days ago, you had already received 20,000 undeliverable ballots have been returned to your county clerk, your borough clerk. Sorry, I know your boroughs. If I say county, just ignore me. I'm traveling the country and in most of the counties, so I can get in the habit of that. I know your boroughs. Okay. I say it, forgive me. Okay. Why are 20,000 undeliverable ballots being returned to the clerk? Why?
Nobody changed dead people, moved people, null addresses, commercial addresses, duplicate registrations. Where else?
Good. She's right on every count, yes? And so, why are you mailing ballots to those addresses then? Pretty stupid. I was on the radio 2 mornings ago, was it? 1 morning ago, yesterday morning. And my host, my radio host, said, he built the house he lives in. No one else has ever lived there. He and 3 other people received ballots at his address. Do you understand what that is saying? Your voter rolls are filthy. And I hate to tell this, I love you Alaskans, I love to retire here, this is beautiful up here. You have the worst voter rolls in the country. In multiple ways. Not only do you have the worst voter rolls, you have the worst voting systems in the country. You have the worst voting officials in the country. It's like when I go to different counties around the country, it's like I'll make a checklist of all the things I'm going to talk to the people about, and I'll say, okay, these are the 2 or 3 things I got to focus on. I don't even know where to start with you guys. You have all of it. If it can be done wrong, you're doing it that way. Everything about your elections is totally botched. And what's ironic about that is as I travel the country, it seems to me you have the perfect opportunity to have magnificent elections. And the reason I say that is because you're divided up into these little tiny communities all over the place. I mean, I was looking at your voter rolls the other day. I've been spending a lot of time trying to work in your voter rolls. They're so filthy. I've had to write algorithms to go through and just clean up the rolls so I can even work on them. I mean, you've got a whole bunch of misspelled cities and villages and names and addresses are all botched and everything. It's like I can't even sort the list by address because it's such a wreck. So not only do you have too many people in your rolls, the ones you have in there, it's a wreck. It's like worse than high school level quality. It's bad. Okay, you're in bad shape. But anyway, as I'm looking through, I'm noticing you've got all these little villages with like 20 people in them. You don't need any electronics to manage an election for 20 people. Okay? All there needs to be is one of them says, I'll volunteer. Here's the list of everybody. And oh, you just moved in? Okay, you can vote too. Let me see your ID. Yeah, okay, we'll add you to the list. Okay, and let's have a potluck on Tuesday. Everybody bring your hunk of salmon, you bring some elk, you bring some whatever. All right, and we'll get together and we'll vote together. We'll count the ballots together and I'll report the tally. And everything is documented and we all sign off on it. And by the way, when I turn in the numbers, any of you can call in and verify that the right numbers got there. How hard would that be? It would be easy to do. It would be magnificently cheaper than what you're doing. It would allow you to trust the outcome of your elections, and your elections would be secure. But instead, what are you doing? You're giving away your elections to some central control somewhere else. And when you do that, by the way, from my basement in Ohio, my laboratory out in the country, I just thought I was going to be doing that for the rest of my life, okay? But here I am traveling around the country fixing elections. From my laboratory in Cincinnati, I can manipulate their election. Why do you have a system that allows that? And my high school students can manipulate your election. It's not even hard. Why would you use a system like that? Why would you use a system where 20,000 of the ballots are coming back, and this is just the start of it, and that doesn't even include all the ones that got delivered improperly to the addresses? Okay, it's bonkers. And I know the answer to that question of why you would use a system like that, because I think that basically you Alaskans are my kind of people. You're rugged, frontiersy, freedom-loving, strong spine people. But you didn't know this was happening to you, and you're just discovering that this has happened to you. So you're in the process of waking up. So I think my number one job is to wake you up, and then your number one job is to wake up 10 of your neighbors. Because right now, you're being disenfranchised from your constitutional rights. You gotta stop that, because if you don't, you're not gonna ever have your state back again. And you've already lost it. And I think you're just realizing now, wait a minute, they took our state away from us. Yep, they did, and they're gonna take away your property from you next. They're gonna take everything away from you unless you right now wake up and tell your neighbors and take action. It's already too late. You're not trying to protect your state, you already lost it. You're trying to get it back. You already lost it. So, I'm going to show you evidence of that, but I just thought that was beautiful that while I was here, this lovely article appeared showing you exactly what I was about to show you. Now, normally, when I do this work, I usually start with a long introduction and I tell about my travels around the country, but I've been having more fun on this trip just jumping right into some data. And so I thought I'll just show you a piece of data from your own county. I think this is very illustrative, and it shows you where I'm coming from and what I'm all about. So what these data, this is a graph I just made the other day, wrong date, but I just made it the other day. The 1980 to present. How many people are voting age in Anchorage Borough? So it looks like in 1980 you had about 130,000 people of voting age. Are all of them qualified to vote? They're voting age, but they're not all qualified to vote. So this is a conservative estimate. It's a high estimate of the number of people who could be voters. So it looks like your population kind of steadily grew for about 20 years, 30 years. And then in 2012, it looks like you peaked and now you're starting to drop off. Does that match your instincts around here, that your population's been kind of fading for about a decade? Something like that? Okay, so those numbers are reasonable to you. That's your 18 and older population. All right. Now, the black curve are the number of people in your voter rolls for each of your elections. So you'll notice that in 1990, it looks like you had about 100,000, a little more people in your voter rolls. And when I see that, I smile. Because I've been studying voter rolls now almost every day of my life for 3 years, and I've learned what a good voter rolls looks like and what a bad voter rolls looks like. If you have between 60 to 70% of your people in the voter rolls, that's a healthy voter rolls. Because there are some people that don't even want to be in there and they're never going to vote. And that's a certain percentage. And then there are people that are moving in and people moving out and people dying. And so there's a 60 to 70% is about right. And I read something recently from some national experts and international experts in voting, and they also said healthy voter rolls should have about 60 to 70% of the people. So when I see that, I immediately say, okay, but that was a healthy voter rolls. But then something happened in Anchorage, and all your voter rolls suddenly shot up dramatically after about 1993. Anybody know what happened in 1993?
NVRA.
NVRA. Who was saying that? Boy, you're on top of things. What's your name? Hi, Penny. Nice to meet you, Frank. She knows what she's doing. NVR, National Voter Registration Act, happened. And what that did is that the federal government started giving monies to states to help them inflate their voter rolls. Okay, but you guys did it on steroids. Okay? All right, I see it when I study other state voter rolls. I always see a little bump right there. You guys don't have a little bump. You like bonkers, okay? You basically, and it doesn't make sense. I would say at that point you probably had 30% too many people in your voter rolls. And what do I mean by that? People who weren't real voters are in your rolls at that point already. Nevertheless, let's just go with it. And then it looks like for the next 20 years or so, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you you kind of track the population a little bit. But then as your population began to decline, your voter rolls surged. As the population is dropping, your voter rolls surged right past your population. So now you have more people in your voter rolls than you even have people available. And remember, the blue line is a high line. It should be lower than that. You follow where I'm going with this? Okay. Now, what the heck happened there? Anybody know? Something special in Alaska. PFD. That's when your state government started using the PFD to put people in the voter rolls. But because you already had too many people in your voter rolls, when they started adding the PFD, you went right past the population. Make sense? You see why your voter rolls are dirty? You surged at least once, twice, surging people into the rolls. Now, I would grant, even without looking at too much detail, I bet you that the people that were added into the PFD, I bet you they're real people, because you're mailing a check to them. Although, is there any fraud in the PFD? Okay, so maybe I might not give you all of it, but I bet you a lot of that is real. I will grant you that. But the majority of this huge surge is this bulk in here. They don't belong in the rolls. I'll tell you that. Now, I heard when I was at the Capitol building the other day, did you know? Is that my baby? Is that my girl over there? Oh, nice. Little kids. All right. The other day I was in Juneau that your lieutenant governor has said that you have 80,000 transient people here that are not qualified to be on the voter rolls, not qualified to get the PFD, but they're voting age. That would be in this blue line. That would be in your population. But wait a minute. That means this blue line should be way lower, yes? They count as population, but they don't count as eligible to vote or eligible for a PFD. So you're in trouble, and you're way past where you should be. Anyway, just fun to look at that. Next thing to look at is this red curve. This is the number of people who voted in each one of your elections since 1990. And you guys have really low turnouts. And that's another huge problem. Because what happens is, allegedly, because if you don't have a lot of people turning out to vote, and you have all these extra people who are in the rolls, anybody who wants to cheat an election can just harvest a few of the ballots from a few of those addresses, and they can easily overturn any local election because those election numbers are so small, and you just have this huge credit line of available ballots. So especially when you're mailing them out in bulk, just go scrape up a few of them and you can manipulate any election you want. And before you go blaming the Democrats for this, I have found more fraud like that with the Republicans around the country than I found with the Democrats. This is not a Republican-Democrat issue. I'm not here to attack Republicans. I'm telling you, this is a problem of we the people have forgotten that we're the government. And we've been letting other people be the government. We've been letting other people teach our children. We've been letting other people run our elections. It's supposed to be us that's doing it. And we've all fallen in our duty and our constitutional obligations. And that's why we're in the mess we're in. And, I'm guilty too. I heard a preacher the other day, he says, I preach to myself, I just let other people listen. And that's exactly, I'm guilty too. I was busy in the lab for 40 years publishing papers. I have 60 scientific peer-reviewed publications, cover articles on the leading journals in the world. I'm a real scientist. I got nominated for Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 1990. I'm a real chemist, real physicist. I just can't believe that the world isn't the way I thought it was when I was living in my ivory tower. Physics is way easier than the real world, I'll tell you that. Anyway, I'm happy to be here. Now, just let me show you another county, borough, Fairbanks. Notice they had the same surge, and it's flat, and the same surge, and the same low turnout. Okay? Or if I show another one, Kenai, you notice that they didn't have it quite so bad, so maybe something was going on a little better there, but they went right past as well. Still low turnouts. Are you getting the point? Guess what? As we look at every single borough in your state, they all follow the same pattern. Did the population follow the same pattern in every borough? No. Then why is the voter rolls following the same pattern in every borough? The answer is because the local boroughs aren't controlling the voter rolls. The state is controlling the voter rolls. And if you go up to your county clerk or your borough clerk and you ask, gee, where do we get our voter rolls? Your clerk will say, the state gives them to us. Your borough clerk is not in charge of your elections. Someone else is in charge at the state level, and they're providing the rolls to your borough. That's your first most important task. If you want to know, if I was to tell you, if you had a credit card and you could spend $1 million, well, we need more than that. If there was no limit to what you could spend and no limit to what you could have if I was God for a day, the first thing I would say is take back your voter rolls. Do not let the state control your voter rolls anymore. You control your own voter rolls locally. Remember, like my simple example with 10 people in a little village. They don't need an electronic voter rolls from somewhere far away. They can just have their own little list, right in their little village capitol building or whatever it is. Keep a list there. There's no reason to have somebody else maintaining that from far away who can add names to addresses who don't live there, like my radio host. He didn't add those people to his residence. Somebody else added those names to his residence. See where I'm going with this? So the step one is get control of your own voter rolls. To do that, you're going to have to learn a couple of principles, which I'm going to teach you today. Okay, and I went ahead and showed you the Matsu. Notice they didn't have much of a surge after the NVRA, so maybe they had a really good clerk at that time. It just kind of paralleled the whole time then, but they did have this big surge. Then there's some interesting redistricting here at the Matsu, and I think they're trying to get rid of Dave Eastman, so I think that messed with the rolls a little bit. But anyway, that's what that's about. All right, now let me show you the whole state. And then I'll give you some more context. I don't usually jump right into data at the beginning, but I've just been kind of on a kick of doing this lately. I know it's kind of baptism by fire, but I just can't help it in Alaska because you guys are just so blatant. And if I can get you to see this, I think you'll listen to me the rest of the talk. So here's for the whole state of Alaska. Here's the population. It looks like you had about 300,000 voting age people in 1980, and it kind of just steadily growing until about 2012, and now you're flat or fading for over a decade. Okay, and notice that the whole state, your voter rolls suddenly surged after an NVRA. So the whole state, basically, you had too many people registered to vote. It tracked for a while, and then of course when you started using the PFD, you took off. Your vote, and then as a state, the average is a higher turnout. All right, but Dave over here, Johnson, Cause America, Mr. Lindell, set up to help support local people, and Dave is the leader here. He gave me these data. Thank you, Dave. PFD. What he did is he went to the state's website and he downloaded the number of adults, not children, the number of adults applying for the PFD every year. So if you think about it, that's probably the best estimate of how many people would be eligible voters in your state. Anybody 18 and older is going to probably want to get that money, so they're going to apply for that PFD. So this light blue curve here is how many adults are applying for the PFD every year in Alaska. And when you look at that curve, that light blue curve, do you notice how it parallels beautifully the population curve of 18 and older? And if you just look at that, this number's about, what, about 515, this number's about 5. So that's about 10%, 10 to 15% high. So that would mean that you have about at least 50,000 people in your state who are voting age who are not eligible to vote, probably. And what did your governor, the lieutenant governor say? You have about 80,000 people of voting age who are not eligible to vote. So we're in the ballpark here, aren't we? That's a pretty good estimate of who would be eligible to vote in your state, that light blue curve. And it tracks beautifully the population, but it doesn't track the number of people in your voter rolls. Do you see that? That's beautiful evidence that your voter rolls are not good. I mean, I really need more. I already showed you all the return mail coming, but you get the point. Your voter rolls are a wreck. I think I've made my argument pretty clearly. Now, what's interesting is when you bring that to the attention of your lieutenant governor, what does she say? Oh no, we've been working hard. We're really cleaning our motor rolls. Well then, what you need to do is like you do in my house when we have a kitty who poops on the rug, you rub their nose in it. Okay? I'm going to put this crap up on my social media. I use on my social media website, so all of you can have it. Put it on your phone. You need to show this to all your friends. You need to rub her nose in it. Everybody needs to see your voter rolls are filthy, dirty, and yes, ma'am.
Nancy Dahlstrom is running for Senate. She is our lieutenant governor.
I know.
Don't vote for her people.
Yeah, no, she's not on our side. She's part of the problem. And that's why you need to rub her nose in this. This needs to buy a billboard. Put this up in your town. Do you have billboards here? Yeah. Okay. Well then, do an electronic billboard or put it on your social media. So I'll publish this on my social media, and you guys can share it with all your friends. The point is, rub her nose in it. Your rolls are a wrap. I thought this was a great wrap just to make that point. All right. In other words, sorry. Your voter rolls are the worst in the country. I'm sorry to tell you that. But they are, and I'm sorry that I have to be the bearer of bad news. I still like you, but your rolls suck. Okay, I already mentioned. Okay, all right, let's go on here. All right, so what I've learned in my work is I can't do this remotely. I have to be with you. Jesus didn't send emails. He went town to town to town, and it was the most successful movement in the history of the world, and that's what I've learned. That's why I'm on the road every day doing this. Because I've learned, it's just, when I only Zoom with people, nothing happens. When I show up, stuff happens. And Jesus went to his own hometown and how'd that work out? Not very well. And I have to admit, Ohio, where I live, that state's maybe the second worst in the country, okay? I'm not very effective at home. So one of the advantages of bringing me in, not claiming to be Jesus, but one of the advantages of bringing me in is I'm from outside. I'm the expert. I'm the guy with the bow tie. Okay? You can come to my state and you can be the expert. Okay? But right now I'm the expert because I'm from out of town with a briefcase. Okay? So use me. I'm happy to help you. NPR noticed I was doing this in the middle of June, middle of 2022. They noticed that I had done 150 talks around the country, and they were calling us election deniers. They singled out Mike Lindell and me and Dave Clements and Seth Keschel. And noticed that I had done 150 talks that year. Actually, I finished the year with over 300. So I'm busy. I'm doing two a day, right? I've been doing this pretty much constantly. Because of that, I got the moniker Johnny Appleseed of Election Integrity. And I like that name. Johnny Appleseed was raised in where I live in Ohio. I was flattered by that. But what it made me do is it made me look him up online because I hadn't thought about it for a long time. And I found this video of Johnny Appleseed singing the Johnny Appleseed song. Do you know this song? Because the Lord is good to me. And so I thank the Lord for giving me the things I need, the sun and rain and an apple seed, yet he's been good to me. Remember that? I love that song. It's a good song. But when I was listening to it, my jaw fell open because it's a Disney movie. But that's 50 years ago. That's Disney 50 years ago. That's not Disney today. They would never make that movie today. They absolutely would not make that movie. And it made me think about my country in this perspective. And that's why I'm talking to you for a second about this. Because when I was a boy, our country was different than it is now. This is the way our country was then. We still knew the difference between an innie and an outie, which we seem to have forgotten that. Who was on duty when we lost our country? We were on duty. I was on duty. When we used to be like this and we're no longer like this, who was the one who let that happen? Mea culpa. I am responsible. So when I travel the country and I meet young people, and adults are always saying, you got to get the young people involved, you got to get the young people involved. They don't have a clue. My children grew up in the age of Obama. They have no idea what they've lost. They believe me, Dad, thanks for doing this work, but they don't relate. They're not motivated. They don't feel the loss like you and I feel, we're the ones that are going to have to fix this. The kids don't get it. They're not going to fix this. So I'm reaching out to each one of you. You were on duty when this happened. It's your mess to clean up, not our kids' mess to clean up. I've actually heard people say, our next generation is going to have to fix this. Okay, well, guess what? That's just kicking the can down the road. You clean up your mess. You made it. Okay, here we go. All right, so California caught the LA Times did a hit piece on me. It was really well done. It was like multiple pages. They had all these really fancy graphics. It was beautiful. They called me the Johnny Appleseed of election fraud. They didn't quite get it right, but that's close. And they noted at that point, this is the middle of 2023, that I'd given over 50 speeches in the state at that point. And actually, I've done over 80 by now. And when I first started going out to California, my friends, Mike and Seth Keschel and all the other guys working in election integrity were telling me, stop going to California. You are wasting your time out there. That place is already communist. That place is already Marxist. Well, I got invited, so I went. Lo and behold, what did I find? I found a state under communism, under Marxism. But because they're under communism and Marxism, every community has this little patriot group that's all sprung up. What happened after COVID in 2020? Supermoms woke up all over the country when they saw what their kids were learning in school. When you're under oppression and under tyranny, it wakes you up. And all I had to do was go town to town in California, meet with these people, show them what to do. We're tearing it up in California. I'm ahead of California more than any other state in the country. It's amazing. You might have heard about Shasta County, Northern California. They have 75,000 voters in that county. And a year ago, January, they voted out the electronic machines. And then the next month they voted out the electronic poll books. And the next month they voted to have all paper ballots hand-marked. And the next month they voted to do hand counting of those. I mean, it's like a year ago, we basically owned Shasta County.
Wow.
Am I against electronics? No. If you go out to my lab in Ohio, you're going to see I build electronics. That's how I pay the bills. Okay, I have nothing against electronics, but they're the wrong tool for elections. Because I can hack into anything electronic. And not just me, and I'm not even an expert at hacking. But I can hack into anything electronic, and experts at hacking, there's nothing that they can't get into. So it's bad to use electronics. It's the wrong tools for our elections. The right tools for our elections are our hands and our feet and our eyes and our photo IDs. That's the right tool. Anyway, so I've got that Shasta County. Now, once they converted over, did our opposition just roll over and say, okay, you win? No way. The state of California freaked out. They've been passing laws left and right. The governor's been passing emergency resolutions to stop other counties in California from pulling out as well, because we had so much happening there. But I'm glad to report that as of Wednesday last week, the state had launched a recall election against one of the commissioners in that county, supervisors in that county, and we won by 47 ballots. It was close. He survived. It was a close one. And it was super important because the supervisors of the county were voting to get rid of everything, but the county clerk was in league with the Secretary of State of California and undermining our work left and right, making it really tough. So we launched the First Amendment war against her. You have to stop playing nice these days. You have to treat this like warfare. We started picketing her house. We wrote songs about her. We would picket around her building, singing songs about her. Her name is Kathy Darling Allen. And so Kathy Darling, and we have 4 stanzas of this, and everybody was calling her Clementine in town, okay? I mean, we launched a full-scale attack on that lady. She announced Wednesday, said she's quit as well. And that's what you call First Amendment blood. But two weeks before that, she said she went on a medical leave for anxiety and depression. Cha-ching, okay? Now, I'm a nice guy. I am a nice guy, and I love people, and I love to hug people, and I'm generally nice. But if you put a gun in my hand and send me to war, what am I going to do? I'm going to create as much carnage as rapidly as I can to get that war over as soon as possible, right? That's what a military person does. Well, this is a First Amendment war. You need to be creating First Amendment carnage everywhere you go. And if you don't fight it like a war, you lose. Okay? So we are fighting like a war in Shasta County, and boy, are we winning. We got First Amendment blood all over the floor. There's blood on the saddle, blood on the ground. I mean, you know that little song. Anyway, so people say, well, that's so mean, Dr. Frank, that you came after that clerk. What's more mean is she was disenfranchising her citizens from their constitutional rights, rights that people died and bled for that we could have. That's more mean, if you ask me. And this is a war, and you have to think of it like a war, or you've already lost. That's where I'm going. So I'm here to wake you up and point out, you got to fight it this way. Stop being all sweet and nice, you Alaskans. You're too nice. Be more mean. All right, here we go. So anyway, that's what's going on. Let me tell you one more quick story. So I was in Massachusetts last year, Lexington, Massachusetts, and it was about twice as big as this auditorium, but it was like this. It's one of the ones that went up. And all on this side were all Chinese people. And it was the weirdest audience I've ever seen. And so I went up to them afterwards. I said, hey, what's going on? How come all the Chinese people are here? And this is Lexington, Massachusetts. And the lady said, we're all Chinese immigrants. We all went through the Cultural Revolution in China. Everything that you're experiencing right now in America, we experienced in China. You don't even realize it. You're asleep. You need to wake up, America. We're all awake. We see it happening. We know this is happening. And then about a month later, I was in Southern California, and a bunch of Cubans in the audience said the same thing to me. We're asleep. And how do you know you're asleep? What happened on election night in 2020? You stood there and stared at the TV and said, huh? What? What happened? Something's wrong. But you didn't know what to do. You didn't know. It's like you didn't even see it coming. You're asleep. You got to wake up because your country just got stolen from you. You have to take it back. And you need to take it back yesterday. Okay? It's already passed. So anyway, I already told you I'm a scientist. Okay? I'm also a terrorist. How did I get into this mess in the first place? So all of 2020, I was modeling COVID. I do that with my students. Whenever an epidemic happens, I always model COVID. Whatever that epidemic is, whenever elections happen, we model that. When sunspots happen, we model that. And when the lander lands on Mars, we model the trajectories of the orbits and everything. I teach my students how to do their mathematics in real life. It's a fun pedagogy. It's a good strategy. So anyway, all of 2020 I was modeling the Ebola epidemic, and I made a lot of political friends around the country during that time. They knew I was good at numbers. You might remember that in November of 2020, November 2020, after the election, Doug Mastriano in Pennsylvania held a national press conference, and he had Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell and a bunch of witnesses come in and talk about all the potential fraud that they were suspected in Pennsylvania. And then the next day, Frank Ryan and Russ Steinman were the legislators in charge of the legislative investigation in the state of Pennsylvania. And that day, when that launched, Kathy Barnett, who had become one of my friends in Pennsylvania, she was a representative, a U.S. Congress candidate from Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. She called me up and she said, Doug, something's wrong with my election. Would you look at my data for me? I said, sure. So she mailed me her data, and I studied it carefully, and I found all kinds of anomalies in her election. So she introduced me to the legislators, and I showed them what I found, and they were impressed. They invited me onto a team of 6 people who had access to everything. We got to do a full forensic audit of the state of Pennsylvania. It's the only one since the 2020 election, and I got to be part of that. I got to get anything I asked for, they would give me. It was awesome. You know, everybody talks about the Maricopa audit. That wasn't even close to an audit. That was a joke, if you ask me. All the things we asked for, I know I was peer reviewer on that audit. All the things we asked for, they wouldn't give us. You couldn't do a real audit there. It was ridiculous. But anyway, we got to ask them. The first thing, I don't want to spend time in Pennsylvania, but I want to tell you 2 stories that will help you understand what I'm telling you about Alaska. The first story is the team of auditors who went county by county. How many people voted here? How many people voted here? How many people voted here? We just added it up. How many people voted in every county? And then the second column, we said, how many ballots did we count in every county? So we had 2 columns. How many people voted? How many ballots did we count? And we noticed that in Pennsylvania, we counted 765,000 more ballots than people who voted. 765,000 more ballots were counted than people who voted. And if you don't believe me, when Secretary Bookvar, the Secretary of State of Pennsylvania, brought the election to the floor of Pennsylvania House to certify the election, one of the legislators raised his hand and he said, excuse me, this is in the formal record. He says, excuse me, Madam Bookvar, we can't certify this election because state law says you shall not certify any election with more ballots than voters. Pretty obvious law, that's me. And he says, and we have 765,000 more ballots we counted than we had people who voted. We can't certify this election. What was her answer? She said, oh, don't worry about it. It's just COVID. All the clerks are behind on their reporting. And once they all catch up, everything will reconcile, don't worry about it. So the state of Pennsylvania went ahead and certified their election anyway, illegally. And by the way, me and the team monitored it for months and months afterwards. It never reconciled. It was always a wreck. But anyway, I just want you to see, that's a super simple, easy to understand way of saying that was a fraudulent election. And did you ever hear about it in the media? No, you only heard this is the most safe and secure election in the history of America, right? That's what you heard. So you know the media is complicit, okay? That's bogus. Okay, the second thing, and this is my specialty, as you've already noticed, I like focusing on the voter rolls. Well, I got my start in Pennsylvania. I asked for all the voter rolls for all time for the county of Montgomery. You might remember that Montgomery County is the one that had 4 Supreme Court cases from Pennsylvania to the Supreme Court. I was in 2 of those cases, and they asked me to focus on Montgomery, so I did. And I downloaded all the voter rolls, and you know what those are, since 1900. And all the voting history, and I'm a scientist, and you give me lots of data, and I'm happy. And so I was scouring through the data and learning Montgomery County voting patterns and developing mathematical algorithms and noticing patterns. And I got to the point where I could find fraud and with my mathematics, and I don't have to get into what transforms are and correlations and all these things are, but I was able to find fraud. In fact, I found fraud in a lot of earlier elections. 2006, I found some fraud. 2012, I found some fraud. And I brought it to one of the guys on the team, and I said, look at this. I found about 30,000 cases of fraud right here in this county in 2014. And he said, oh yeah, we know about that. He gave me a lawsuit where a bunch of rest homes had been harvested. And so my math was working. I was able to find fraud. It was pretty cool. But anyway, I showed that to Restine, and he's like, wow, you're cracking the secret here of this crime. But anyway, let me tell you one story. Yeah, dear. Can I get some water? Yep. Yeah, go ahead.
Many of these cases.
What?
Many of these cases that have been brought to the court.
Yeah.
Are punted on the basis of standing.
Correct.
Which means show me who was harmed.
Right.
Which is an impossible directive.
No, it's not.
Are you sure?
I'm going to show you how.
Oh, I hope so.
Yes. What she said is these cases been rejecting on standing. While I wait for my water. Yeah. Let me tell you, for example, after the election in 2020, a bunch of secretaries of states got together and filed a lawsuit with the Supreme Court. That was rejected on standing. Guess what? It should have been. The secretaries of states don't have standing. They weren't harmed. What happened is, in the Supreme Court case that Mr. Lindell put together, we reconfigured the case to show the harm, and we had the AGs file the case, not the Secretary of States, because the AGs had legal standing. The Secretaries of States did not. So we fixed that problem in the second time around. Does that make sense? And there are many cases around the country that are improperly filed, and that's why they don't even get heard. But then, to your point about you have to show the harm, you do have to show the harm. For example, in your state, if you were to go to the Lieutenant Governor or the Supreme Court in your state and say, these voter rolls are dirty, this is a crime, they would just look at you and say, who is harmed? You haven't shown the harm yet. You have to show the harm. If you were to say, look, these voter rolls are dirty, 20,000 ballots just got returned, your judge would say, show me the harm. What's the harm? When one of those ballots went to somebody's house and that ballot was voted, and it wasn't voted by who it was supposed to be voted by, that ballot is a fraudulent ballot that when you spend all that time researching and deciding who you're going to vote for and you voted, that ballot nullified your ballot. Your constitutional rights were deprived of you. You were harmed. You have standing. Do you understand? That's my tack. And that's what's working. That's how we won in Shasta. We've got about 30 counties now in the country where this has happened. And I need a beachhead county, a beachhead borough here. One of your boroughs needs to stand up and say, we're not going to do this anymore, like Shasta. But you have to take them through a process to make that happen. Yeah.
So our Constitution, our state Constitution says that every citizen is afforded the same equal opportunity. And vote by mail for those 20,000 people who did not receive a ballot didn't receive the same equal opportunity as all of the voters that did receive a ballot.
Yes.
Isn't that a harm?
Go to court and try to win that one. I've seen that one all over the country. Nobody wins that one. That's a good advantage to having me here. That doesn't have you haven't proven there were any fraud. You haven't proven anybody was disenfranchised from their ballot. You need to show somebody's vote was disenfranchised from them, or because they were harmed. Whose constitutional rights were violated?
The 20,000 that didn't receive their ballot, right? We have affidavits from the last April election.
And so then who's guilty of the problem? That's gross incompetence. So
From the municipality of Anchorage.
So then you're going to sue the city. And then we're going to be suing them for years and years, and maybe we might win. And really what all that happens when you do, I've been down this road. What will happen is, oh yeah, you're right, this is a horrible system, gross incompetence. You can't blame the clerk, she's just following the policy. So we need to hire 3 more clerks so we can clean up the rolls. And then we're going to spend another $50,000 on new machines next year because these are the ones that, you see where I'm going? You don't win this way. Does this make sense? And I'm not disagreeing with you, I'm just pointing out, I've been down this road now in like 30 states and that goes nowhere. That whole first year of 2021, I thought those strategies would work, and I was helping them, and I testified in multiple of those cases. They go nowhere.
And it's not just those undeliverable ballots, it's the 30,000 voters that were paired from the list before the ballots were even mailed.
Yeah, I've seen that. So, who is harmed? Who are you going to prosecute? Who's at fault? It's a gross incompetence. It's a crappy system. You can say to the state, this system's no good. We don't want you to use it anymore. And they'll just say, okay, well, propose which system we should buy then. Right? And you end up nowhere. And I'm not saying that you're not right, but it doesn't go anywhere is my point. And I don't mean to be negative. I'm just telling you that's my experience. It's sort of like there's an intersection in town that's dangerous, and several of the citizens get together and they go to the county officials. They say, man, we need a stoplight on that intersection. That's dangerous. And they say, yeah, we agree, that's horrible. Yeah, we'll put it in next year's budget, right? And then we might debate it. Maybe it gets bumped to the following year's budget. The discussion is kind of rhetorical. Then some kid gets run over in the intersection. And then the next week they have the lights, they have the stoplight up there, right? You have to have the harm before you get action. And so I'm going to help you find the harm. I'm going to help you find the fraud in your own borough. And when you find the fraud, every one of those cases of fraud is stealing your ballot that you cast. And the next case of fraud is nullifying your ballot. And the next fraud, and so you are harmed, and you are harmed, and you are harmed. And that gives you standing. And we're not going to go to court because the courts take forever. Even when you have standing, we have a different strategy we use. We go to the court of public opinion, and we read those cases of fraud. I usually like to start with 20 or 30. You read them right into the public record, right during your city assembly meetings. And you take out a newspaper article that day and publish them in public. And you get on the radio program that morning and you read them into the public eye. And you then, once you've read them to your county officials, you say to them, okay, we've just shown you that the system you're using is disenfranchising us from our constitutional rights. Our God-given natural rights enumerated in the Constitution, as Chris Ann Hall encourages me to say. It's disenfranchising me from my rights. Therefore, you're now informed you may no longer use this system. I'm not asking permission. You work for me. We're the sovereigns. We're telling you we are harmed. You may not use this system anymore. And by the way, now that you're informed, if you continue to use this system, you're complicit. And we're going to hold you accountable for a felony because depriving someone of their constitutional rights is a felony. And we're going to hold you accountable, and we're going to sue you, and we're going to, and usually, I'm getting my gander up right now. We don't usually come on that strong at first. Normally, we just show them the evidence and give them our edict that you're not going to let you do this anymore. Yeah.
Are you going to be addressing going after the surety bonds?
What?
Are you going to be addressing today going after their bonds?
Bonds for the win?
Pardon?
Surety bonds, bonds for the win?
Performance, yeah.
That's part of the strategy.
Awesome. Okay.
What she's bringing up is one of many tools you have in this war that most people don't even know existed. And so as we've been fighting this war, what we've been finding is once you inform them of the situation, then you tell them, we don't tolerate it anymore and we're holding you accountable. And by the way, we're not going to use broken elections to fix broken elections.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to impeach you immediately. We're going to recall you immediately. We're going to sue you immediately. We're going to picket you at your house immediately. Oh, they hate that. They hate that. I've been actually kind of shocked how quickly they cave around the country. I assume people are like me. I assume people are going to draw a line in the sand and fight. No way, they cave. They cave left and right. These people, they want to be liked. Yeah, well, we're going to not like you. And you say, man, mean things about you if you don't cooperate. But yes, we can talk about once in a minute. All right, I'm rambling a little bit. I'm going to try to get back on topic. But are you following? I think you're following me pretty good right now. Hey, so anyway, I didn't finish my Pennsylvania story. How do I get off of that? This is super important that you hear this. Super important. So I studied all the history of Pennsylvania and Montgomery County, and I noticed right before the election in 2020, 50,000 people got added to their voter rolls all in one day. And I was surprised by that, but I just figured, well, maybe the clerk kind of let it build up and turn them all in at once or something like that. Okay. All of them voted in the election. That was a surprise to me too. But it happened. But here's where it gets interesting. By the end of November, half of them had been removed from the rolls, and by the end of December, all of them had been removed from the rolls. I did not understand that, so I asked Secretary Bookvar, why are you removing these voters from the rolls? And the email came back to that very day. It said, because they moved away. That surprised me. I did not expect that answer. And so I went back, and if you've seen voter rolls, they got name and address and birthday and voting history there. So I went back and started looking them up, and I used the NCOA, National Change of Address, and she was right. They had all moved away 10 years earlier.
Right. Wow.
And so what happened is somebody with access to the voter rolls had added 50,000 new former voters back into the rolls, people that had been removed, people that had been cleaned from the rolls, added them back in, knowing that they're not real voters. They stuffed ballots for those 50,000 people, and then the National Change of Address Registry, the automatic cleaning routines of the state, were cleaning them out after the election. And by the way, you might remember there was a truck driver from New York who drove 200,000 ballots to Pennsylvania, and he was arrested. You want to know where those 765,000 ballots come from? Well, there's 200,000 of them right there, okay? But here's another 50,000 I just told you about, right? These are names that are added back into the rolls, and then people are stuffing ballots for them. That's a problem, a huge problem. So the next obvious question is, well, who did that? Okay, I have access to everything. So we got a copy of the state logs for the state database showing who was logging in and who was adding and whatnot. Now in cybercrime, you don't know who it is, but you know their user ID and password. So what we noticed is that the person who logged in and added those 50,000 used the login credentials for the Hillary Clinton campaign. And that was a shock to me again. This is early December of 2020. I did not expect that. I'm still quite naive. And I called Russ Diamond and I said, Russ, why is the Hillary Clinton campaign in your voter rolls? This is confusing to me. And he said, oh, I know what that is. And he sent me an newspaper clipping. The state of Pennsylvania hired the Hillary Clinton campaign in 2015 to write an app for phones and tablets and computers that allowed people to go rock concerts and college campuses and football games and registered people to remotely from their phones and whatnot. And they were hired to do that, and those credentials were still active. So then our next question was, well, wait a minute, if the Hillary Clinton campaign has access, who else has access? So we had a team of 6 volunteers go through 2 months of the logs, and they found 32 NGOs, 32 non-government organizations that had back-end access to the voter rolls. They could add people, and they were stuffing people. We confirmed it over and over again, and because I'm a scientist, I always do one more experiment before I make public comments. We sent 100 people out to knock on 1,600 doors and confirmed that these were all false voters. They were not real voters, they were ghost voters. Vote ballots have been counted from people who did not exist, and we proved what was happening. By the way, in your state of Alaska, is it legal for NGOs to put people in your voter rolls?
Yes.
Your state gives access to NGOs all over your state. So it's not even illegal. They're given access to do that. Your voter rolls are filthy dirty for a lot of reasons. It's just you have every one of them. It's kind of crazy. All right, you get the point. All right, now one more comment on this and then I'll move on. Because I think you need to understand a big principle here. We had all the evidence. We showed the 50,000 in. We showed that they all voted. We showed that they were removed. We showed who put them in. We showed that that was happening statewide, multiple NGOs. We went to the state legislators, the researchers. This is now about a week and a half into December, and we showed them this fraud. It's open and shut case. Canvassing was already done. What would I expect to happen, Mr. Naive Eiffel Tower physicist? I expect to show them the results, and they go, oh no, we gotta decertify our election because this thing was totally corrupted. That's what I'm expecting. That shows you how naive I am. They didn't say that, obviously. They said, oh no, our voter rolls are corrupted. Yeah. We're gonna throw out our voter rolls. Okay. And we're gonna hire a firm to rebuild the voter rolls. And they awarded a contract, $10 million to a firm in Pennsylvania to rebuild the voter rolls. It was given to them on December 20th of 2020. And 3 days later, that firm was bought by Zuckerberg. And of the 32 NGOs we had found were manipulating ballots in the state, the number 2 manipulator was CTCL, the Center for Tech and Civic Life. That's Zuckerberg's organization. And they just put the fox right back in the hen house. And that's when I said, I have been duped. They are going to cover this whole thing up. And I thought I was saving the country. No, these people were going to cover the whole thing up. And I was so mad, I didn't talk to them for a week. And I felt so humiliated. I'm here, I'm trying to save my country. I'm giving up day and night fighting to try to expose all this stuff. So what I did is I said, well, I've got all this cool new mathematics. I'm going to test it out on another state. And so I downloaded all the data from Florida. And I ran all my mathematics on it, and I found a whole bunch of fraud. So I flew down there. I met with the Secretary of State of Florida. I met with DeSantis' team, his election integrity team. I flew down to Mar-a-Lago to show Trump's team. And I expected them to all say, oh no, look at all the fraud in Florida. They covered it up. And I did North Carolina next, and they covered it up. And Ohio next, and they covered it up. I was going to red states, places where Trump won, and I was assuming these got to be good states because they're Republican, and Trump won here, so certainly these are good states. No, there's fraud in all these states. Everywhere I'm going, I'm finding the same kind of fraud done in the same way, and nobody's doing anything about it. And I was feeling really despondent. And then Kathy Barnett called me because that day the Supreme Court rejected the Supreme Court cases from Pennsylvania. And I was just thinking, my country's done. The courts aren't going to fix it. The legislatures aren't going to fix it. We're done as a country. And I was feeling really bad. And Kathy Barnett said, okay, she says, thanks for your help, Dr. Frank, but I give up. They're not going to fix my election for me. But you know what? I met Mr. Lindell last week at CPAC. And I'll give you the phone number. So she connected me to Mr. Lindell's attorney, and his attorney set up a presentation, and I gave a presentation to about 16 attorneys. And the next day, Mr. Lindell's attorney called me back and he set it up. I went down to Memphis and Mr. Lindell made a movie about me. It's called Scientific Proof. It's his second documentary. The first documentary he made was called Absolute Proof, and that's where he showed that he had all of his recordings of the elections being manipulated electronically. And then he made this movie about me, The Scientific Proof. I was 3 hours of filming. I was really tired. By the end, I was stopped giving scientific explanations. I just said, hey, Mike, see that graph? See that? That ain't natural, buddy. And that kind of became a catchphrase now. Where it says, they need you to, oh, hey, how you doing? That ain't natural, buddy. Because it's easier to say that than to give a long technical explanation for things. Anyway, that movie is about an hour long. It's called Scientific Proof. And then there's another 30 minutes of that interview in another movie called Absolute Interference. And I took a little long on those stories, but I think they taught you a lot about what's going on. You have the exact same problems here, but we would never have been able to find it here because we would have been denied access to everything we need to find it, if that makes sense. And so it's really nice that I got to do that. Anyway, the next big thing that happened to me is the president asked me to be his keynote speaker at his first rally. President Trump he called me and he said, I want you to explain to the world how my elections got stolen from me. And so it was his first rally. It was in Wilmington, Ohio, and I got to tell the world how our elections were stolen. I had about 30 minutes. I worked so hard on that PowerPoint because I knew I was going to try to explain complicated things to the whole world, and I wanted to look good. The whole world's going to be looking at me, right? So I remember walking up to the microphone on Saturday afternoon at 6 o'clock. It was 80 degrees, and people have been standing there for 6 hours in the hot sun, drinking beer, listening to rock and roll at a Trump rally, and boy, oh boy, is that a rowdy crowd. Okay? And I remember walking up to the microphone and looking at those 21,000 people and thinking to myself, I just wasted a week of my life because I'm going to try to teach these people math. Okay? And I started teaching it, but about 10 minutes into it or so, it was silent. It was eerily silent. 21,000 people were glued to these two huge jumbotrons. It was awesome. And every new graph that would come up, I just like waves of, ooh, ah. I mean, it was like the best math class of my life. I had eaten them out of my hands. And the next day they made memes about me. That was why I was still believing I could save the world with math. So I was going around the country teaching math, and this happens to me from Colorado, one of my first trips after that, and that's when I met Tina Peters and Red Pilled Her. And I don't know anybody here of Tina Peters and selection code and what happened to her. She was the county clerk in Mason County, Colorado. We have forensic images of her Dominion machines that show the manipulation. And if you haven't seen that movie, it's called Selection Code. It's a free movie you can see about that situation. That's a disaster. As soon as that came out, of course, the New Yorker did their head piece. It's fun to see what they think I was teaching. That's the problem with mathematics. It doesn't communicate to most people. But that was pretty fun. If you search me on Google, there are pages and pages and pages of hit pieces on me. And they always call me the math teacher from Ohio, which is fun because they don't mention the fact that I'm teaching high IQ kids math a couple mornings a week. Highest IQ kids in the country. They don't mention that part. They just say I'm a high school teacher. They don't mention the fact I have a Nobel Prize nomination in chemistry. They say he's a math teacher from Ohio. I think that's pretty fun. Anyway, next thing is Mike had the Cyber Symposium in August of 2021. He showed everybody he had recordings of every election taking place during the election. A year later, he said, guys, it's too late. It's the moment of truth. You got to get rid of your machines. America wasn't listening. He was still thinking he could save the country from the top down, and this was cause America was growing from the bottom up. Finally, he got the message. I love Mike. He's a great guy. This year we called it the Election Crime Bureau, where he announced a whole set of tools to help you take back your elections. A whole bunch of systems in place nationally to help the grassroots take back the country. He's a great guy. It's a fun thing. If you haven't seen that stuff, you can see it for free on lindelltv.com or frankspeech.com. There's a lot of good content there to help you a lot of fuel. And he pays for all that, so please help him out. Please buy his pillows. He's a good guy. I promise he's a good guy. I spoke to him after the conference last year. He said he announced to everybody he's broke. And he spent his $35 million already, and he's borrowed $10 million so far. So I said, well, how can I help you, Mike? And he said, tell everybody to go to mypillow.com and buy pillows, or donate at the Lindell Offense Fund, and tell everybody to use the Dr. Frank promo code. I said, Mike, I don't have a promo code. I'm not doing this for money. And he said, no, you got a promo code now. So he gave me a promo code. So I got even. I called that corporate, and I set it up so that everybody who uses that, the 25% commission automatically goes to the Lindell Offense Fund. So I have the best promo code. So use my promo code, and you're helping Mike the most. And there's been a fun thing on the side. Every couple of days he'll send me a text. Oh, I see you're in Alaska now. Because he tracks his sales by promo code. And he sees the Dr. Frank promo code popping up all over the country. He says, man, do you ever go home? You know, it's fun. Anyway, so please, somebody buy pillows or sheets or something. I love the robes. I love the slippers. I've got them in my suitcase. They're good stuff. Anyway, if you don't trust Mike, trust me. He's the real deal. I vouch for Mike. If that doesn't convince you, this ought to convince you. All right. Mike got joked around enough here. Let's get back to business. All right. Let me show you one more thing about your state, and then I'm going to show you the strategy. How about that? Okay, so I'm going to show you some simple math, I promise. Simple math. And I get the data from Lieutenant, in your case it would be the Lieutenant Governor's site, but other states, the Secretary of State, and the Census. So I'm going to show you a bunch of data. What I did is in December of 21, I went around and I said, how many people are in every state of voting age? So California's got a lot of voting age people. Alaska's got just a little bitty bit. Okay? That's the number of people in every state of voting age. And then I said, well, how many people are registered to vote? And that's the black curve. And so look at California, they got about 70% of the people registered. Looks like Florida's got about 80, maybe more. Maybe 90% in New York, and maybe Texas is 80%. You get the idea. But if you look closely, you'll notice that 7 states have more people registered than they have people. Okay? And guess what? You're one of them. Okay? You're one of them. So that's one of the things I did. And then I also kept how many people voted in every state. But it's hard to look at this way, so I'm going to show these data to you in a different way. I want you to see how you measure it in all the other states. And by the way, here are 3 easy numbers for you to remember. I'm not going to give you a lot of numbers to remember. Here are 3 easy numbers to remember. You have 600,000 people in your voter rolls. You have 550,000 people of voting age. And you have 500,000 people who get the PFD. Okay? 3 easy numbers. 600,000 people in your voter rolls, 550,000 people of voting age, say there are more people in the voting rolls than there are people of voting age, and about 500,000. Those are round numbers, but it's a good way to remember, because it's easy to remember a round number, yes? In the 2020 election, you had about 550,000 voting age, and about 600,000 in voting. So you have 108% of your people registered. That's a problem, yes? All right, let me show you. By the way, I'm not the first person to figure this out. Judicial Watch has been going around the country suing counties and states for not following HAVA, 2002 Help America Vote Act. They've been suing, they've been winning everywhere they go. They haven't lost a suit yet because the states are breaking the law. They take money from the federal government and then they don't follow the deal that they made. That's what's been happening. Let me show you the results. So remember I told you at the beginning that a healthy voter rolls has about 60 to 70% of the people registered. That'd be a healthy voter rolls. So across this axis, this is the percent of 18-year-olds that are, or of 18 and older, who are registered to vote. And it should never be above 100%. That's stupid, right? You shouldn't have more people registered than you have people. On the other axis, I'm going to show you the percent of voting age people who voted. So what percentage of people are registered, what percent voted? Registered, voted. So let's just talk about a couple scenarios. Let's say you have a low turnout. Only 45% of people turned out to vote. That sounds about like you guys. And you have dirty voter rolls. That's dangerous because that means you have a lot of people in the rolls who could be used, a lot of names could be used for stealing the election. Or imagine another scenario. You have really clean voter rolls and a high turnout. That's good. That's what we want. High turnout, clean voter rolls, because then you have a good, secure election. What you don't want to be is along the diagonal. If you're on the diagonal, think of it this way. You're making the voter rolls dirtier and dirtier, and you're making the glass of water dirtier and dirtier, and you're drinking more and more of it. So you get more and more dirt. So you don't want to have dirtier and dirtier rolls and more voting. That just means you have more and more fraud. You don't want that. So you don't want to be on the diagonal. You know, I can make the math easy. Good, bad, okay. So here are the 7 states that I showed you a minute ago that have more people registered than people. You got Maine, Vermont, Michigan, New Hampshire, North Dakota, Kentucky, and Arkansas. I know. And you guys just eked out New Hampshire. You got the dirtiest voter rolls of all. And what's really wrong with this graph, I shouldn't say wrong, what's really, you have to think about this, is my denominator, because this is a percent, is the voting age people. But didn't your lieutenant governor just tell us you have 80,000 people that are transients here? They would count in your census, but they're not. So actually this yellow dot should be way over here, okay? It's really bad. It's worse than it looks, and it's already looking bad. Okay, here's the rest of the country. So you can see that the whole country's in a wreck. And I just have to tell you, you saw how your voter rolls are going faster than the population? Every state, the voter rolls are going faster than the population, not just Alaska. They're all doing it because it centralizes power. It's a bad situation. Looks like Wyoming might be the only exception. There you are. Oregon took all their voters that were inactive and made them active, and they're all male in state. So what that does is now you have 8 states with more people in the voter rolls. And I went to a couple places like California, and I took out the illegal aliens because that's an official number, and that puts them up here. You can see they're worse off, and same with Texas if I took out the illegal aliens. And I could do the same thing for these other states that just haven't taken the time to do it. In other words, a lot of states that look good only look good because the denominator is not a good denominator, simple because we're showing percentages. I just wanted you to see that idea. So you can see how you measure up to the other states. Mail-in ballots, dumb idea. I think we already covered that, why it's a dumb idea. And I don't need to go into detail on that. But you have ranked-choice voting. I mean, how long do we have to talk today? Right? Okay, it's like everything you can be doing wrong, you're doing wrong. Ranked-choice voting is how you give the election to the minority instead of the majority. Crazy. I'm not going to talk about it. You guys already have this figured out, I think. Okay, I'm going to move ahead. Because I already spent too much time talking about other things. All right, go fast. All right. So, what's the core problem? The core problem is that in every state, the elections are now controlled by the states. The elections are no longer controlled at the local level. If they were controlled at the local level, would you mail 30,000 ballots to people that weren't really there? No, you wouldn't do that. You'd save the money. You'd save the money, and you wouldn't waste the time and energy to do that. The only reason that can happen is because someone far away is in charge of it, not somebody local. So that's the core problem in every state in America. And I just want to show you an example of this so you can understand what I'm talking about. So here's Wisconsin. I had lots of secret meetings around the country. I had a secret meeting with Speaker Voss, but it became public, which is why I'm willing to talk about it. So set up by a citizen. It was me, Sean Smith, and John Eastman, who's Dave Eastman's attorney, by the way. A good guy. And we were speaking to Speaker Voss. It was Sean Smith, is retired Air Force colonel. He's in charge of cybersecurity and operational testing for the Air Force. He retired from the Pentagon a few years ago. He's a good guy. His job was to show Speaker Voss how hackable the machines were, and my job was to summarize the fraud And then John Eastman's job was to say, now that you know your systems are not secure, now that you know you have all this fraud, here are your legislative powers, here are your legislative obligations. That was the plan. Sean did great. I was about halfway through my presentation, and Mr. Voss interrupted me. He said, Dr. Frank, he says, I just don't believe we have that much fraud in our state. I said, why do you think that? He says, because we did recounts in our 3 largest counties, and all the recounts came out right. I said, sir, it doesn't matter how many times you count the cash in the register. What matters is how many of the bills are counterfeit. It doesn't matter how many times we count the cash in the register. What matters is how many of the bills are counterfeit. It doesn't matter how many times you count those 50,000 ballots that were stuffed in Montgomery County. You can count them standing on your head. You can count them with machines. You can count them by hand. It doesn't matter. What matters is how many of the ballots are from the real voters. So if you're auditing the machines, you're auditing the wrong thing. You need to be auditing the voters. That's where the problem is. But nobody does that. They all audit the machines. That's the problem. So anyway, that long discussion, we convinced him, Speaker Voss, that there was fraud in his election. In fact, it was supposed to be secret, but when he walked out of the room, he was surrounded by 10 television stations, and they cornered him against the wall, literally against this wall. It was beautiful. They had microphones in his face, and they said, okay, so tell us, what did the election denier do? And he said, well, we have widespread fraud in the state of Wisconsin. In fact, more than the election margins. Did you hear that in the media? No. Oh, you must see the media is complicit. Yet here he is, admitting to the world there's more fraud. And they said, what are you going to do about it? He said, there's nothing I can do about it because the governor will veto anything the legislature does. You need a new governor. And that just means he wasn't listening in class, because John Eastman was explaining, no, the legislature has plenary authority over the elections. The governor has nothing to say about it. The Secretary of State has nothing to say about it. The Lieutenant Governor has nothing to say about it. The legislature has plenary authority. But our legislators don't have the spine to stand up. That's the basic problem. That night, Mike Lindell had it on his program. By the way, his program is weeknights, 6 Central Time. You can find out what's going on around the country in elections for real. Let me show you one of the things that convinced him that he had fraud in the state. This is from 2009 to 2021, December. I testified before their legislature, and I used this graph with him as well. I said, notice what happened. This is month by month, how many people in the voter rolls in the 3 largest counties in your state. Now I want you to notice that right before the 2012 election, suddenly the voter rolls surged in those 3 large counties, and then after the election they were purged. Does that sound familiar? And then in 2014, same thing in the midterm, and then in 2016, the voter rolls filled right back up again, and then after the election, 25% of the people were removed from the voter rolls. I said, that's a huge, these are people who voted, why are you removing them? And then they were all back again in time for the 2020 election. I said, how do you explain that, sir? He said, oh, yeah, those 3 counties, they have a lot of turnover. 25% turnover? I said, wait a minute, but what about all your counties? Every county. When I testified before their legislature and put this graph, it made the cover of all the newspapers across the state the next day. Because they were being told in the state of Alaska, they were being told in the state of Wisconsin that they couldn't have widespread fraud in their state because every county ran their own election. Does that look to you like every county is running its own election? No, that ain't natural, buddy. Every county didn't change the same way did it. And just so you know, that's not the only state like that. I'll show you one more state, Wyoming. They're the most conservative state in the country. They have 8 out of 9 people registered Republican. They voted 3-1 for Trump, more than anybody else. They're the most conservative in the country. Here's their 3 largest counties. I showed it to them last year in January. Nobody even knew this was happening to them. Okay? This is their 3 largest counties. Here I didn't put it on the percent scale. I've got it on an absolute scale so you can see the raw numbers. And I would show this to the clerks and their mouths would fall open. They're saying, Dr. Frank, that's not real. That can't be real. I mean, what do you mean? We're the ones who control the rolls. No, you're not. They think they are, they're not. In fact, I could do that in every county in Wyoming. We can put it all on the same scale, and what you notice is they're changing 20 to 25% every 2 years, which is preposterous. Their population isn't changing like that in their counties. So you would think, when I show that to a conservative state, they would say, well, we got to fix this problem. But let me show you their legislature. This is their legislature last year in the 2023 general session. They're about to finish the 2024 general session. They had 26 Republicans last year who voted in the legislature along with the most conservative Republican. I call him the King James Republican. So 26 Republicans, and they had 26 Republicans in their legislature who voted along with their 6 most liberal Democrats from the 6 big cities in Wyoming. So in other words, we call these rhinos. They're not real Republicans. You can't win in Wyoming with a D in front of your name, because 8 out of 9 people are registered Republicans. So you put an R in front of your name, you get elected, and then you act like a D. Okay? Does this sound familiar to you? See why I'm showing this to you? You're not alone. And everybody thinks it's just their state. Oh yeah, Alaska's like, I heard Dave telling me, oh, Alaska's a testing ground where they've developed all this horrible election fraud stuff. I hate to tell you, Dave, every place I go, they say that. Everybody says to me, we're the testing ground. No, every place is equally corrupt. It's like it's a horrible mess. Okay. Anyway, I think I made my point. I'm going to move ahead. All right. Not all the states go up and down, by the way. You noticed your state didn't go up and down. It just went whoop. Okay? And same with Kentucky. Kentucky just went whoop. In fact, if we zoom in a little bit, their rolls were growing faster than their population. In 2020, their rolls popped right past. They have 105% of their people registered in Kentucky. Okay? And in Oregon, they have 105% of the people. So it's...
I gotta say something. I gotta say something. It's not that we're the worst in the state, or in all the states, and the testing ground. But we tested all at one time, and all the other states are doing it. We're number one.
Okay, you're number one. I might grant you that. And that's all in good fun, of course. By the way, there was a lawsuit in Kentucky. Judicial watch sued them, and they were required to remove a bunch of people from the voter rolls. And 6 months later, the A said, you can't sue them, and they put them right back in. These were people proven to not be legally in the voter rolls, and yet they were put back in. Okay? And that's why I don't trust lawsuits. And here's another reason I don't trust this process. A year ago in California, Judicial Watch sued Los Angeles County, also with Election Integrity Project in California. Actually, Judicial Watch helped join on to their suit. And they won the lawsuit, and LA had to remove 1.2 million people from their voter rolls. Within 2 months, their voter rolls were completely full again, but it wasn't the originals. They had new non-real voters that they put in. So one of the things you're going to hear, and I hear it all over the country, and I want to push you away from that. People say, oh, we want to clean the voter rolls, we want to clean the voter rolls. That's a waste of time. You know why? You might work so hard for months to clean those beautiful voter rolls, and then I'll log into it from my basement in Ohio and make your voter rolls dirty again. The problem isn't that your rolls are dirty. The problem is that somebody else is in control of them. You need to get control of your voter rolls, then clean your voter rolls. As long as somebody else is in control, you're wasting your time trying to clean them. But I'm not saying it's a waste of time to study the voter rolls. Super important. You need to be studying the voter rolls and keeping track of who's real and who's not. Because then when elections happen, you're ready to go on fraud investigations and illegal voting. And we can talk more about that. I think I hit that point pretty well. How is all this possible? Of course, it's the machine stupid, because everything's all integrated, and I could spend hours telling you about the machines. Your machines are online. I can log into them remotely and turn them on and do all kinds of things. It's preposterous. I can spend hours talking about that. You shouldn't think, you should just get rid of all of them. You need to get rid of them. You need to vote Amish. All paper, no machines, okay? And one of the things your clerk's going to say is, oh no, HAVA requires us to have machines for handicapped people. That's not what HAVA says. HAVA says, if you have machines, then you have to have machines for handicapped people. It doesn't say you have to have machines. And my daughter Nellie, my oldest, she's 26, she has Down syndrome, she's awesome, she's one of my best buds. Super smart kid. She saw me working on my sample ballot before the primary election. She snuggles up behind me, "Oh, Daddy, I love John, I love Joe." She knows these guys because I take her to events with me all the time. And so everybody knows her, and she's more famous than me. Everybody loves her. So I took her in to vote for her first time in 2022 at the primary. She wore her Vote Amish shirt. She voted on paper, with pen and paper, and we only had one problem, and that's that it was not a private ballot. Because when she went into the voting booth with her pen, she was like, "I love John!" And so she was basically announcing to everybody what her votes were. And it was in an elementary school gym, and you could hear it. And everybody was just grinning all big and stupid. Because everybody loved it, right? That's the way we should vote. We should show up on election day. We should vote together in person and celebrate our liberty. That's the way it should be. And I got the idea for voting Amish because in Ohio, 60,000 Amish people came out to vote for the very first time in Ohio in 2020. They turned out because the governor was imposing COVID restrictions on them. It woke them up. Like in California, when the government is imposing restrictions, it woke them up. 60,000 Amish people turned out on election day, in person, and voted on paper. That's voting Amish. You need to vote Amish. You turn out on election day, vote on paper, in person. That's what you need to do. Like they do in Europe, paper polls, paper ballots, in person, single day. The local precinct counts up the ballots and reports the tallies that night. If all of Europe can do it in a single day, we can do it in a single day. We're smarter than them. Okay? This is my favorite way to vote. This is the way I think we should count. I haven't told you how to get here yet. I know I'm running a little long. I got to speed up. But we call this the Cajun clothesline. I haven't shown this enough on this trip. We spent $47 at the hardware store. You put the clerk puts the ballot on here. It's a 12-issue ballot. They have 100 clothespins, and the citizens do the tallies. And after 100 ballots go by, they compare tally sheets, and if they agree, they rubber band the tally sheet to the ballots, put it in a box, and do the next 100. How do they know they reached 100? They have 100 clothespins, and they ran out. Okay? And they take that bucket, and they go back around and do the next 100. The whole thing is being streamed so everybody can watch at home on their computers. You can even do your own tally, because you can be looking at the ballots, and you can do your own tally. This does not fix the problem that every ballot is from who you think it is, but it restores faith in the counting process. And it's way cheaper than the machines you're using. It's orders of magnitude cheaper, and it restores faith. But my favorite thing about the whole thing is it's all online. Ha ha ha. Okay. Stalin said, is it enough that people know there was an election? The people who cast the votes decide nothing. The people who count the votes decide everything. That's the problem. All right, let me tell you what to do now. I think I've given you what the problem is. The problem is you're out of control. You've got to get back in control. All right, so I'm going to tell you how to get back in control. Now, I wrote a brochure describing this. I spent 4 hours the other day in Juneau training the teams, but I'm going to give you the core principle of it. You have to think of it like we're at war. I mentioned that to you already. It's a 5th generation war. I've been taught that by General Flynn. I spent a lot of time with him. We're a 5th generation war. That means they're taking over our country without firing a shot. You have to think of it that way. A lot of my help is from Chris Sandhall. She's a remarkable constitutional scholar. She's been coaching me. I think of each state or county or city or borough like a chess game, and I try to decide, how big is Anchorage? How many voters here?
737.
How many?
737.
730,000 voters around?
No.
And the state, how many in Anchorage? 200? 280? Okay. So Shasta County, for example, is 75,000, and they're able to do it. And that's kind of a local power. The reason I asked about Anchorage is because, you need to attack where your power is. And if the county's too big, you don't really have power at the top. You have to attack at your city level. And so you might consider city attack as well. But I don't know, in general in Alaska, I would address the borough level, because that's where the money for the elections is being spent. Think of it like a chess game. That's where I think I would attack the borough level then. And you could use a legal strategy, and I think I've already given you my opinion of legal strategies. I don't think they go anywhere, they take too long. Legislative, I like Dave Eastley, he's one of my favorites. He says, don't say legislative strategies are not good, they're just long-term. And I agree. Long-term, a legislative strategy can win, but not short-term. And we're in a war. We don't have time for the long-term right now. I'll tell you though, what makes the legislative strategy work in the long term is if you're doing your work in the short term. So let's do our work in the short term, and I'm showing you what that work is. Okay, and that's the We the People strategy. That's a constitutional strategy. And the first step of that is interposition. And let me teach you what that is. Interposition, I'll give you an example. In New Mexico, Governor Grisham, after there was a school shooting, she said, enough is enough. And she said, we're going to have a temporary ban on open carry of weapons. Okay, the next day, one of the sheriffs stepped up and said, not in my county, we're not enforcing that in my county. By the way, you don't have sheriffs here. That would be another long-term strategy I would start working on in your state. You need sheriffs. Sheriffs defend your constitutional rights. That's their job. Their job is not to implement state law. Their job is to stand between you and the state law. They are your constitutional shield. They swear an oath to that. So you need sheriffs. Anyway, after he did that, then 70 other sheriffs joined in. That's called interposition. They're standing between you and the government. And you don't have sheriffs in your state, but you have places like Homer, where I was, where the FBI raided some business down there. And as I was leaving there on my last trip, one of the guys came up to me and kind of swung his coat open, showed me his 45, and he says, that's never going to happen here again. So what he's basically saying is the citizens are going to interpose and not allow the FBI to come in anymore. If the FBI wants to come into my house in Ohio, they have to go see my sheriff. And they have to show him the warrant. And the sheriff will examine the warrant. And if it's a legitimate warrant, then the sheriff will escort the FBI to my home, and he will supervise and make sure my constitutional rights are respected. Okay? You don't have that shield. They come straight in for you. Your shield, therefore, has to be you. You have to defend your own rights. How's your militia doing?
Not well.
Where's your militia? Read the Constitution. The Second Amendment says you're supposed to have a well-regulated militia. That's why you have the right to carry weapons. Because you're supposed to be armed and proficient, and you're supposed to be maintaining a militia. Where's your militia? Oops. I'm guilty too. And I felt guilty about it, so that's why I'm now well-armed. And I've got my AK and my Winchester and all my weapons in my house, and I'm pretty proficient now. But only after I realized I was failing in my constitutional duty to be armed and proficient and ready to defend my community. So if you don't have come on, this is Alaska. You guys should all be carrying, man. You got bears to worry about. Okay? So you need a militia. Get your militia going yesterday. That's an important thing, okay? All right, so interposition is what sheriffs do. The next thing is non-compliance and nullification. So, when the governor said, we're going to not let you open carry weapons anymore, the sheriff said, I'm going to interpose and not enforce that. Then the citizens said, we're not going to comply because it's unconstitutional. Were any of the people breaking the laws? They were holding to a higher law. You don't have to follow any law that compromises your constitutional rights. That's the higher law. And then the third thing was nullification. And what happened is, I was there when they did this. I just happened to be there in New Mexico. 50 guys put their guns on, and they went and did a protest on the state capitol steps. Good to see you guys. And they said, come and take our guns. Come and take them. 50 of them. So they nullified the state law. They didn't merely not comply. Not comply would mean they just kept wearing their guns and going to the grocery stores or whatever. They took it another step. They nullified the state law by, in your face, we're wearing our guns in your face, right? Now, if only one of them had done it, what would have happened? He'd be in jail with the other J6ers, right? Okay, 50 of them. So a key idea of nullification is that you need to do it as a group, right? You do it as a group. Don't be a target, be a group. It's an important idea. One more idea, another example of this, in a little church in New Mexico, Truth and Consequences, New Mexico, little church. During COVID, the governor said, we're closing all the churches because they're non-essential. Is your church non-essential? If it closed, maybe it is. Anyway, so this little church, he said, we're not closing because we're essential during a pandemic. And so he said, went to the sheriff, and he said, Sheriff, right there in the Bill of Rights, the very first one, says freedom of religion. Are you going to let the state close me down? This is a constitutional right. Your job is to defend us. The sheriff said, and I have this on tape, I'll go to jail before I let them shut your church down. And that sheriff stood on the steps of that church week after week while the state police lined up on the other side of the street ready to arrest that pastor and shut that church down. So that's interposition, physical interposition. The next thing is the citizens, the members of that congregation attended. In fact, they doubled their attendance, okay? Because they didn't comply with that order. And then the third thing is, and I love the nullification, the sheriff read the state constitution, and it said in an emergency, state of emergency, he could deputize as many citizens as he needed to deal with it. So he deputized every member of that church as a sheriff's deputy. Okay? That's nullification, right? So in other words, there's interposition, non-compliance, nullification. You got it? That's the idea. What if you go out, you take your voter rolls, and you show that your voter rolls are enabling fraud in your election? You don't have to use those voter rolls anymore. Why? You don't have to comply with any law or policy that's violating your constitutional rights. And every one of those fraudulent ballots that are being cast is disenfranchising you from your ballot, your constitutional voice. You don't have to comply. In fact, you have a duty to not comply. In fact, you have a further duty to nullify it because you're defending your fellow citizens from having their constitutional voices stolen from them. You got where I'm going? This is a big deal. All right. By the way, if you don't know that story, Chris and Hall put this movie together, Non-Compliant 2, all about sheriffs. You should show this all over your state and earn yourself some sheriffs. That'd be a great strategy. All right. I'm going to skip over that. All right, let me give you a simple example, and then I'll wrap this up. So in Ohio, our Governor DeWine, he said we're going to limit, during COVID, he said we're going to limit groups to 10. And so there's a bunch of super moms. Gosh, I love these ladies. They taught me so much. They organized a big dance ball in the capital of Columbus, Ohio. And 600 of us came together. I brought my daughter Nellie. We danced the night away. It was a super spreader party. We had kissing and spin the bottle contests and snuggles and dancing. It was a great night. We invited the governor. We streamed it online. Y'all come in, okay? Why are we doing that? Right to assemble. Right to peaceably assemble. You don't give up your constitutional rights ever. Not even for 2 weeks to flatten the curve. You never do that. That's a huge error. Don't do that. I did for 2 weeks. I listened. I made that mistake. I'm never making that mistake again. We never yield our constitutional rights, ever. Another thing he said is you must wear masks in public places. So our super moms, they organize shopping days all over the state of Ohio. Women would turn up 20, 30 at a time at the grocery store. They'd go in, take their masks off, and go window shopping for hours. Okay? All over the state. They are not going to tolerate unconstitutional orders. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. You either use our rights or we lose our rights. Okay? And that's the situation we're in. In Ohio, 2 years ago, they passed constitutional carry. So I can carry my gun open, closed, loaded, unloaded, anywhere I want except schoolyards. Okay? And the state of Ohio. So every time I go grocery shopping, this isn't me. Every time I go grocery shopping, I put my gun on. And I wear it big and obvious, big 45 like a cowboy. Okay? I want it to be normal. I'm using my rights. And I want everybody to use your right. If you have a gun, you should be wearing it. You're in Alaska. You have to protect yourself from bears. Okay? Okay. And you need to use your rights. Or they're going to take them away. You need to make it normal to be using your rights. You see where I'm going? You need to be normal. And my dream is that one day I'll be in the grocery store and a little boy will say, Mommy, he has a gun. And I'll say, yeah, don't you feel safe? She'll say, don't you feel safe now? In fact, Mommy's scared you too, don't you feel safe? This is where we need to get. If you're not using your rights, you're going to lose them. It needs to be normal. So, in summary, strategy is this is a war between good and evil. You know that's true because they want to castrate your children. Okay? As you know it's good and evil. The Constitution is our best weapon. I thought data and evidence was going to be our best weapon. I was wrong. The Constitution is our best weapon. We need to fight the First Amendment war so it doesn't become a Second Amendment war, because it's headed that way. The country's heating up right now. As I travel around, everybody's getting angry. The pots are getting hotter. Okay, so let's fight this First Amendment war and win it like we won in Shasta. We didn't need to shoot a fire shot. But by the way, when we're reading stuff into the record in Shasta County, we had 10 supermoms on the street with their signs, and we made sure the media knew that we were going to be there. We had guys out there on the streets carrying guns too, openly showing them. In California, yeah, baby, it's legal. And what was fun about it is that one of the Linsky rules, Saul Linsky's rules for radicals, is power is not what you have, it's what your enemy thinks you have. And so when you have people walking on the street with guns, and ladies walking with signs, and you've packed out the supervisor's room with people, standing room only, and you're reading fraud into the record, and you're telling your leaders, we're not going to tolerate this anymore, you have a lot of power. See how this works? We need to use our First Amendment rights like weapons. I already told you about that a little bit. We're the sovereigns. We don't ask for permission. They work for us. You're not going to them and saying, pretty please, can we get rid of these systems? You're going to them and saying, we no longer give you permission to use these systems because they're disenfranchising us from our constitutional rights. We're not going to tolerate it. How do you know we're upside down? Well, because when Antifa comes to town, you call your police departments. That's wrong. You need to grab your rifle, you need to call your neighbors, and you need to meet Antifa on the street. I learned this principle from the 15 counties now I've been in America where they did exactly this. Here's an example, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. The people lined the streets, Antifa showed up. They said to them, okay, we love the First Amendment. You guys want to have a demonstration? We'll all watch. First window that breaks, we're opening fire. Okay? Antifa got back in the van and went on to the next city. You know why? Coeur d'Alene is a beautiful city now. You know why? Because the people defend it. Your state can be a beautiful city and state, if you will defend it. But if you don't use your constitutional rights, if you don't step up and defend yourself, if you're waiting for the legislature to save you, if you're waiting for your borough clerks to save you, hell's freezing over first. It has to be you. You have to be being the government again. And the way you do that is you form a small team. That's step one. Step two of my steps is you organize that team like a war council. You have different functions on the team, and I'll list all those functions for you. Step three is you have a plan. You formulate a plan that depends on your local nuances, and you implement that plan. And while you're implementing that plan, you're building a local movement. You're having radio programs. You're hosting movies. You're teaching your community what's going on. That way, when you have public hearings, they show up, and you're packing the place out. You're building a movement. That's how we won in Shasta County. By the time you get to step 7, you've got control of your county or your borough, and you're acting like the government again. You need to defend yourselves. You are the government. And I got to tell you, I've been shocked how so few people are required to win. I've been totally shocked across the country. It does not take a majority to prevail. Rather, an irate, tireless minority, keen on setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men. When it comes to the Second Amendment, if the government says we have to turn in our guns, what do we say? Come and take them. But when they come and demand our ballots, we turn them over without a fight. And that's our constitutional voice. And that's how we protect our Second Amendment rights. And that's how we protect our children. Yet we just relinquish them without a fight. We have to stop it. Stop relinquishing your voice. It's your constitutional duty to defend your constitutional voice. I already told you, if you're not counting your own ballots, you're losing. Then I'll finish with this. We show more due diligence in a football game than we do in our all-important elections. Only in America will we stop a football game, drag out measuring chains, and look at a play 15 times from 6 different angles to make sure the right call was made, but we refuse to verify the integrity of an election of the highest office in the land or any other election in the land. This is how we know we're upside down. We are backwards. We care more about a football game than we care about our children's future or our future or our state. We're upside down. We've lost the way. And we also don't realize how much power we have. And that is our biggest strength. Once we realize our constitutional weapons, once we realize we can sue them for their bonds for the wind, once we realize we have power over them that you've never been taught, you have no idea, you start using those power. You have tremendous power. So how about if I end there? And I'm looking forward to coming back in a couple months when I'm throwing bonfire on it, gasoline on your bonfire this time. Next time we'll have teams all humming, and we'll be taking over your state. It's awesome. Tell me again your name? Penny. Penny for your thoughts.
We have a small problem. We have a runoff election like 28 days.
Are you going to all receive ballots by mail?
Yes.
Oh, good.
And it's for the mayor.
Oh, good.
Really red and really blue.
Okay, so all of you are going to get a ballot in the mail, right?
Right.
Try this. Saturday before Tuesday, when they're due, right? Are they going to be due on a Tuesday?
Yeah.
Saturday before they're due, have a big barbecue. Invite everybody to the church, right here. Bring your ballots, all filled out. Put them in a box. Everybody watches, film the whole thing, put them in a box. And then shake the box, so nobody knows it's anybody's ballots, so you preserve anonymity. You didn't seal them in an envelope yet. Take them out, under cameras, count them all. Tally everything up. See where I'm going? Report the tally to the county or the borough. Don't give them your ballots. Where does it say you have to give them your ballots? You've documented everything. You've tallied everything. If they have a problem with that, you sue them. This is my constitutional voice. You have to count this. Now, they're not going to fall into that trap. They know they'll lose out instantly. You've documented everything. What are they going to do? Say no? If you do that, you will make national news all over the country, and you will inspire throughout your state other boroughs to join you, and you'll be taking back your election. And by the way, while you're doing that, you are showing how cheap and easy it is to do this in a transparent way that everybody trusts. Wouldn't it be fun to do that?
I think we ought to do the park on 9th and 10th Avenue uptown.
Do it in public.
A giant barbecue.
A giant barbecue. I love this. Now, if you don't feel comfortable, don't. You can go ahead and trust them to count your ballot and mail it in. But I don't trust them. What if you did that? Just an idea. Now, how did I get that idea? Because I'm so smart? No. Because there's a county in southern Washington named Clark County where a bunch of churches got together and organized, and they turned in 70,000 more ballots than anybody was expecting because they generated a movement and they swept all the primary elections in 2022. Okay? They generated a movement around this issue, and the churches sponsored it. This is why here I am in a church. This church can sponsor this, you guys. Or you want to go in the park, I'm fine with that too. The point is, you do it as a group. What if just the people in this room did it? What if just this 50 people? That's going to be a national story right now, I'm telling you.
But it's all done on one day.
Yes, do not turn in your ballots early. If you turn in your ballots early, you're giving the bad guys the knowledge they need to know how to do this stuff. Because I can tell you 7 minutes after you vote, or your ballot is counted, I can tell you who voted and what the tally is. Anywhere in the world, I can tell you 7 minutes after you vote. Why would you give them the information that they need to cheat your election? Don't do that. Turn it in at the last minute on election day. You see where I'm going? They'll text you.
For your ballot.
I can't even believe how gullible we are. And people say, oh yeah, I know my ballot was counted, Dr. Frank. Well, how do you know? Well, because the state told me.
I about died.
Yes.
Oh, your ballot was received. I go, who does this?
And so you're basically giving away all the information to the people that want to cheat you, how to cheat your election. Don't do that. It's crazy.
Hello.
Yeah. And the thing that always gets me is people say, well, I know my ballot was counted because I went online and looked. How do you know they counted your ballot, first of all, even though they say they did? And how do you know they didn't count somebody else's ballot that turned in a ballot for you?
And how do I know they didn't throw mine away after they texted me?
And how do you know they didn't replace it? I mean, there's all these things you have no way to know. And as long as somebody else is counting your ballots, you'll never know. You need to count your own ballots. It's just that simple. Stalin said it right there. Hi.
The RNC, the new RNC.
I know the RNC. Yeah.
They say do.
Thank you very much. Early.
Yeah.
I know I flew out to Vegas and met with the TPUSA, and then they've got Scott Pressler going around the country to encourage everybody to do that, and chasing ballots and whatnot. We sat down with them and tried to set them straight. They're making so much money, they're not going to change their strategy. In other words, they don't care about integrity, they care about their power and influence and money they're making. Does this sound familiar? The GOP is the biggest opposition to my work all around the country.
I believe you.
But don't you think that we need to participate in the GOP so that we have our input?
Okay, thank you for that. So, as I've been traveling the country, I've learned certain things that work and certain things that don't work. Bonds for the Win works. We got a third of the clerks in Pennsylvania to quit with that. I know that works.
Help you organize the state.
Okay, we can talk, and there are details, and we've learned some bad lessons from that too, so don't run into that
I
willy-nilly.
know, that's why I'm here.
Yes, that's important. In terms of precinct strategy is what you're talking about. You need to take over the GOP. And when I first learned about the precinct strategy, I liked it, but I thought of it as a long-term strategy, which it is. But I've been shocked. It's working way faster than I expected. Last year, we took over 6 states with the precinct strategy. What I mean by that is we took over the GOP in 6 states, the grassroots up. Because what the GOP's been doing for decades is they've not been telling people how the GOP works. And so fewer and fewer people are involved in the control of it. You're supposed to have a representative from every precinct who elect delegates who go to the party who make the selections for you. And those people don't even know, and most of those positions are vacant. And they're not trying to fill them. Because every time they fill one, they take away their own power. They like it that fewer and fewer people are making the decisions in the party, and look what you've got because of that. You've got a GOP that's not producing real grassroots candidates that match their people. Now in Nebraska, they did that last year, and we took over the GOP in the state of Nebraska by filling a third of the vacancies. And now the legislature of Nebraska has been inviting me in multiple times to help them work on new legislation. They're inviting me to fix their elections. And the Attorney General of the state of Nebraska has invited me in multiple times, Dr. Frank, I'm prosecuting this fraud. Why are they suddenly paying attention? Because I'm so smart? No, because the GOP is now run by the grassroots and they're going to lose all their support if they don't start doing what the people want.
We have a state convention coming up next week. Help us.
It's kind of late, but you're supposed to have precinct captains. And you're supposed to elect them in your last election, and you probably didn't. But every state's a little different, so I have to learn your GOP, and that's what you should be doing. So anyway, that's precinct strategy, and bonds for the win, and 7 steps, and yes, sir.
Yeah, we're just teaching biblical citizenship.
Biblical, okay.
Right, and I encourage people to run as delegates. We have 10 first-time delegates that have been through biblical citizenship.
Okay, that's another thing that's working around the country, is I've seen it all over the country. People are taking constitution classes everywhere. It's awesome. The whole place is exploding. When people learn the Constitution, they're like, wait a minute, this is so powerful, and they use it. It's a biblical, so you notice all these things are emerging everywhere around the country because we're waking up. That's why I'm optimistic.
We just need to get them together.
Okay, so here we are. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, you guys are together. Get organized. You in a minute. Ladies first, then you.
Okay. Ed Martin Jr. down in Kenai
presentation on Alaska bonds. And
Alaska bonds?
yes.
That's bonds for the win?
Yep.
So you two need to talk.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay?
And it is powerful.
Good. You have to watch out. I know that your state law requires them to be bonded, but it's their individual responsibility to make it happen. My understanding is, because I have started researching this a little bit with locals, and a lot of them just aren't.
No.
And so that makes them vulnerable in certain ways, so you can go after them.
So that means they've never officially been seated, so everything they've ever voted on from day one is void.
Well, you can make that argument, and I've seen that made, and people pushing that, and the judges will just say, well, that's just a paperwork issue, and then they sign it, and then you're done. And see, I don't disagree with you. You're correct. But in effect, it has no effect. You just end up screaming, point of order, and I'm not disagreeing with you. This gentleman was patient. Thank you, sir.
So, I was convicted here in the last primary at the Senate race. I put my ballot in the machine and I seen the sticker on the side that said Dominion software. So I made a resolution that I never put my ballot into the machine ever again, or let it go into any electronic machine. So what I did was I drafted an affidavit that when I serve it to I fill it out in person, and I take it there and I record, audio record or video record me serving them. And that way I have my conscience that and this one, the most recent one I revised, it has more case law, and it warns them because in the last municipal election, I recorded them. I went to the canvassing of the election, and then they said, I went up and I spoke, and I said, what'd you do with my ballot? They said, we put it in the machine. Okay, so I assumed for that, but more importantly, I'm doing it again, but this time, I'm gonna have the complaint in. And like you said, you can sue people and they can take years or decades, but the court of public opinion integrated with the actual courts, and then you're serving them. The thing is, I personally can't put my ballot, after what I've heard from you and I've heard from Mike and everybody else, my ballot is not going to a machine, and you gotta hold those assholes, pardon my French, accountable, because they're gonna lie, they're gonna deceive you. And when I went up to him, he said, when I went to vote this last election, he said, your vote has to go into a machine. I said, not according to the First Amendment and my protection of my religious beliefs, because according to my belief in Jesus Christ, and I read on the paper, that a fundamental principle is telling the truth. And when I know that you are going to possibly put my ballot, that harms me. That's the offense, that's the tort. But the more important thing is the point and the public opinion. You blast these people. So you get them, you say, my ballot's not going to a machine because I served you on this day, on camera. You're to sign the affidavit. They put it in there, so they're going to count it.
So why don't you lead this park thing with the barbecue?
Barbecue.
You should lead it. You're the guy.
Well, I mean, we're going to have beef. Do we have moose? The thing is that if you can't do the barbecue, I want to do the barbecue, but if you don't, it's just the thing you can do. You can serve them because I know, watching the numbers, they cheated this first primary. They're going to cheat this next one. You can guarantee it.
And when you turn in your numbers, I see your pen. When you turn in your numbers to them with your tallies, you shepherd those numbers through the process. You say, I want you to show me. I'm going to supervise you inserting my numbers properly into the tallies. You supervise that. You don't ever give away and you're not giving them their ballots. You're giving them your numbers. You understand what I'm saying? And you force them to prove to you. You don't have to prove to them that the system is fraudulent. They have to prove to you that the system is trustworthy. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. Penny, you had your hand up. I told you to wait. And then this lovely lady, Penny. Yes, sir, Penny.
Does the affidavit method have teeth?
Say that again.
Does the affidavit method have teeth?
I like it. Go ahead and do it. It ends up being one of these things where you go to court and nothing happens. And I don't mean it in a negative way. It just nothing happens. So you do all that energy, and I like it. Keep doing it. But but don't expect a result from it. It's sort of like call your legislator and tell them you're complaining, but don't expect them to fix it. You should still call. You should still put the pressure on. It's a multi-front war, right? And if you're already not going to put your ballot in a machine anyway, you're perfect for my little strategy, my crazy strategy of having a barbecue and counting. And why not lead that effort and and advertise all over the media? Don't trust the elections? Great, bring your votes here. We'll count them in public.
It's all over the media.
It's already?
No, it's.
Yeah, put it all over the media.
Alaska Public Media.
There you go. This lady than you. Hi.
Oh, I was just going to remark on the putting all your ballots together and counting them, working that number to the municipality. So this is what came out in the last public session canvas, based on Justin's prior vote last year in the April election, is there's no provision in the municipal code that allows for hand count of the ballot. So when that is turned in, the count is turned in that way, they're not going to count the ballots based on municipal code. Right?
State law says it has to be counted.
This is a municipal election. So
Okay,
they're going
that
to-
is, yes.
The hand counting.
So then sue the city and watch their attorney. I guarantee you, I was talking to Davey about it earlier, they're not going to fall into that trap. If they do, wouldn't it be lovely? That they refuse to count your ballots?
The municipality's violating the state law and the Constitution.
Well, no, but she's sort of right. It's a municipality. Look, they can run their election their way, but if they refuse to count your ballot, then you should sue them, and that'll be a national case, and that'll be a state. It'll generate. It allows you to win in the court of public opinion. And when I mentioned the strategy at breakfast this morning, I love this guy, Dave. He said, well, you can hope that they'll fall into your trap, but I doubt it. If they talk, these guys, these city people, they don't do anything without talking to your borough attorney first. And they're going to talk to your borough attorney, and the borough attorney's going to say, if you do that, we're going to lose in court. That's what he's going to say. So you end up winning, and you end up bringing it into the public as well. And you can say, and by the way, we counted 323 ballots in about 70 minutes, and it was cost us nothing, or whatever. Look how much cheaper it is, and now we trust. And you're showing your community the right way to do it. Yeah? You had your hand again, and then this gentleman.
I did. I just wanted to announce that I've been through biblical citizenship 3 times, and it's a great thing to learn about the Constitution. But I created a course to follow under that called Cops at Your Door, What Are Your Common Law Rights? So
Wow.
if you think people are going to come to your door and start knocking on your door, and there's videos all over the place of the FBI, the ATF, all these guys are showing up saying,
Yes.
hey, talk to us. We're all sheep going to the slaughter.
Yes,
We don't
we
know
are.
what to say, what not to say, how to do that. So if you've got pencil and paper, you can email me. I've got a waiting list going. It's called happyhappykaren@gmail.com.
Repeat, please.
Are you following me on social media? Are you following me on social media?
No, sir.
If you'll post, did you see my little thing? If you'll post that on my social media, I'll make sure 100,000 people see that.
All right.
The Holy Spirit is convicting me. You just scared me to death. So the email is happyhappykaren, Karen, @gmail.com. The class is going to start whatever the Thursday, April the 25th, I think is the right one. It's 4 weeks long.
Take a picture of this. Give me all the details, and I'll post it on social media.
Okay, I left my cell phone in the car.
Yeah.
So I'm so eager to get here. But yeah, thank you so much for coming. This is like
I'll take
awesome.
a picture and send it to you.
Thank
Yeah,
you very
okay,
much.
that's good. So you'll get it. But if you send it to me, I mean, I used to have a lot more on social media, but they shut me all down. So I've got about 100,000 right now. But if you'll give me that information, I'll get that out.
I'll share the slides.
Yeah, what you want, my friend.
All these ideas, especially Dustin. Dustin is like a walking, beautiful trouble. And
He's referring to a book called Beautiful Trouble, where they list about 100 different ways that you can make all kinds of trouble in your community legally, and it makes good changes.
And
And he's a walking, dirty, beautiful trouble.
he is a walking, beautiful trouble. And the principle of the reaction is the action.
That's
Remember that?
Alinsky.
Well, it's a beautiful trouble. They do
As well.
it so
Okay.
well.
That's an Alinsky one too.
Yeah. Well, they just modernized them.
Yes, yes.
But as all these ideas flow around, if we could apply the beautiful trouble principles to what you're doing, because you might lose in court on some of these issues, but their reaction to you is going to be so bad.
Yes.
Especially with the elected representatives, it's going to be so bad.
And Dave Eastman's a beautiful example of that. He just had his ethical thing yesterday.
Yeah.
And it was so bad against him that they actually hurt themselves.
Yes.
Yes, they actually made fools of themselves.
Yes.
The reaction helps us.
Yes.
And that's why if they fall into the trap and refuse to count our ballots, their reaction is a beautiful moment for us.
Yes.
And so we're setting them up for a fall, if that makes sense. And worst case, we lose however many ballots and they don't count. That's the worst case, right? The best case is they have to count you and you created a national scene and we'll promote you all over the country. And I'll make sure that all the right people get to meet you and you get promoted on Mr. Lindell's program as well. That'd be a beautiful moment. Okay. You know what's ironic to me? When I was a boy, it was the liberals that were doing this. It was the liberals wearing flags and talking about free speech and constitutional rights. And now they're the ones stifling us, and we're the ones. Nature repeats itself. Yes, dear.
What strategy do you have or that you've seen around other parts of the country? You keep talking about suing. Most of these people are on fixed incomes. So
Pro se.
Pro se.
You sue pro se. You don't get a lawyer to do that. That's stupid. That doesn't work. You sue pro se. That you yourself. And that's why you need advice from places like Bonds for the Wind. Pro se means that you represent yourself. You don't get an attorney. I mean, there are some situations like his where I would get an attorney. But for these things, for Bonds for the Wind, you don't need an attorney. You do it pro se. I hit another hand, but you're following up. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, so a question. If we were to employ that strategy of hand counting the state election for the general election, how do we employ a count of ranked choice voting by hand?
You don't. You don't comply.
Because that comes out right, they don't release the results of who's going to the second round for a couple weeks after they count it.
So maybe you think that through, and I don't want to try to answer every question right now because I'm not good enough to do that. I'm not experienced to do that. You need to get a team together and think about it. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, maybe you bite off only what you can chew. Maybe you have your own ranked choice ballot and you run your own. But I just think that's so stupid. Ranked choice voting is unconstitutional. You know why? Because when you're done and some of the votes didn't count.
That's right.
And I can show you, you've deprived people of their vote. Are you hooking me out of here?
I'm gonna say this, okay? You are required by the state of Alaska, they are required in their AS, which is the state law, to do 5% of every district has to be hand counted. So how are they hand counting? And if it's ranked choice voting and they tell you they can't hand count.
Right.
Don't take that answer they give you.
They can't
The law states that you have to do 5% of the district. It's black letter law.
Maybe you guys are handling the 5% for them.
Be the 5%.
Yes, sir.
Article 3, Section 16 of the Constitution, Alaska Constitution says, the governor shall be responsible for the faithful execution of the laws.
And they're not. So you can sue him too. And I don't, and I say sue, but be careful when I say that. I'm not saying you need to spend a lot of money and get attorneys into that because I know where that goes.
Yeah.
But you're bringing attention to this. And I think you win in the court of public opinion better than anything. There are a lot of big issues you can chase. The one issue that I'm finding that you can win locally is this election thing. It really does work because you put them in the hot spot locally, and you don't give them a choice. You corner them in, and you make their lives miserable if they don't comply. And the nice thing is that the law and the Constitution are on your side. So you just keep turning up the temperature, and they cave. Who else? We're having fun. So I sort of answered your question and sort of didn't. But really, that's why you have to do the 7 steps. You need a team. You need to have strategy. You need to think it out. You don't willy-nilly make choices at the last minute. And in a real war, every battle plan doesn't survive first contact with the enemy. So as soon as we implement your plan, they're going to have some response, and you're going to need to respond to that. And you need to have a group that's thinking carefully. And by the way, don't form a group. Don't form we're the 2nd Street, battalion. Don't be a group, because then you're a target. Just be a bunch of citizens together doing the work. It's like the Supermoms. They didn't have a name. They didn't have an address. They didn't have a 501c3. They just got organized and did it. Now there's nobody to come after. Okay? And you don't want to be that person that they're coming after. Yeah.
Frank, I just wanted to add, redundancy is very effective for staying on something, because last year I did it, they emailed me, they said, you're not showing any citations or case law. So then this year, I gave them, you're violating 241 and 242, and I said, warning, that if you do this, then you're going to be criminally impossible. So that, because when they can't come back this year and say, yeah, we went ahead and put the machine, because once they admit to that, then you got them. But when you have an idea, it's important to stay on it. Because like when I got the petition to him for our dangers, for instance, I was rejected by the municipal attorney. But the next time I did, I got that language approved. And now anytime I want, we can put that language forth. It's just consistency going after these. Because what they are is they're MOA, they're sleazeball attorneys grouped up with feds.
They're sleazeball attorneys, keep going.
And what you have to do is call their bluff. Like you said, where's the 5% hand count?
Yeah.
You say, well, we can't afford that. They're liars, and until their feet are held to the fire, they're going to continue to lie to us.
Yes, and there are two things you said there. Stay persistent, I agree. You have to be, what did Sam Adams say? An irate, tireless minority. You have to be irate and tireless. Keep the pressure on, never let them off. And you said something else that's really important there, way more important than I understood at first, and that is that everything they do, they consult with those slime bag attorneys first, okay? Everything, so you're playing a game of chess, you need to be strategic, you need to know what they're going to be doing. Every move you make, you know they're going to consult their attorneys. That's a big deal. You need to think like them, you need to plan, you need to play chess. So some of you are better at chess than others, I know. Sometimes I'm kind of being your strategist right now, but you need to, some of the people on your team need to be that person. You just sit back away, don't get too involved in a lot of the stuff, just pay attention to everything your team is doing and play strategy, play chess, watch what the enemy's doing. Some of you need to be researchers. Like in Shasta County, we noticed one of the 3 people we did research on, one of the 3 supervisors there, are having trouble in their business. So we set up a boycott of their business. Okay? I mean, this is war. Okay? And you put pressure on everywhere. So as a team, you can do all this stuff. You're not going to win one guy, but you're going to win when you got a whole bunch of other people doing stuff and teaming up together. See the difference? Because you can't beat the Germans by yourself. You need an army. You need an army. So that really, in the end, that's how we're winning. And in the end, the people are waking up and being the government again. Okay. It seems so simple. But anyway. Yeah, hi.
Just the persistence. So our assembly did something against their attorney's advice. He advised them against them. They passed an AO to remove a newly elected mayor. And the attorney said, you're getting into separation of power.
Right, because you're supposed to do a recall, yeah?
They did it anyway. And so,
keep going.
keep the fire going. The only way we will get this is to just keep the fire going.
And if it's the same naggy woman every month, it's in a nice way. If it's the same naggy woman at the assembly meeting, you lose. There need to be 10 other ladies, and then the next week there need to be 20 ladies. That's how you win. Even though you're relentless, don't stop, be relentless. But they don't even listen to you anymore. When you show up for the meeting, they just go out there and do their email, right?
But I'm reaching the people in the audience.
That's right, yes. And that's one of the people on the 7 steps. One of them is what I call a promoter. Their job is, and another one is a recruiter. So you need somebody promoting the fact that Tuesday at 11 o'clock we're going to be giving testimony and getting all the moms to show up. And then you have recruiters, bring in the churches. By the way, this is an important issue because everything runs downstream from elections. So you don't like the school books? Okay, that's school board elections, right? We need elections fixed. Oh, you don't like that we're taxing too much? Well, that's downstream. Get the different groups. Get your Rotary Club. Get your Lions Club. Get your churches. Get all those moms who are angry about the pornography in the schools, or the anti-vaxxers who don't want to be jabbed against their wills. Get all those people in board because the elections are what's upstream from their issue. Yes?
So if everybody came together and voted in person somewhere, and you were hand counting them, and then turned them in, and they said, no, we're not going to count these.
Yeah.
That could be horrible on a very close election.
Could be.
I mean, what's the...
I don't disagree with you.
The risk, right?
Right.
That's something to definitely take.
So I like she said, it could be horrible if, let's say it's a really tight election and the 50 people in here that voted, they denied your ballot, and that was the difference. Man, it's just shaping up into a beautiful case, isn't it? I can see that one going all the way to the Supreme Court. But imagine the public outcry from that. I think my reading of that, my chess playing matches days, you hope they fall into that trap. Because that's your constitutional voice. They can't deny your voice. And you have all the documentation to prove. Because you filmed everything, you showed everybody voting, and everything was counted in the open. How can they say no? If they do say no, they are depriving you of your constitutional voice.
Well, I don't think it would take barbecue to get everybody to do something like that. The Republican proposal that we just had at some of the churches here in Alaska, there was a huge turnout. And
What brought that turnout?
yeah,
PPP.
Yeah, but that's not the same as this, is it?
well, no, but I just think that there would be a lot of people that would be down for this, and I don't think it would take barbecue forward.
So can we get the churches that organize that to help organize this?
I think the downfall would be if the votes were rejected.
Right. Well, if you're afraid they'd be rejected, just turn them in. Yeah. Put them in their envelopes. They're jumbled. You don't care which one goes in which one. Put them in envelopes and turn them in. Yeah.
So there's 50 people here.
Right.
The church should have our contact information on the signage. Is it possible that the church could keep us linked together without being in groups by sending out blind copy? You don't know everybody else's email address, but let's at least keep connected.
Yeah, well, did you sign up on the sign-up sheet? Yeah. Sign up on the sign-up sheet, the only person who has this account.
Okay.
Yeah.
We could be the consultant attorneys group or something.
Yeah, sure. And go ahead. I think, by the way, we're starting to implement. This is what we did for 4 hours in Juneau. We went through the 7 steps and we planned the next steps and the strategy. And you just happen to have a mayor's runoff. And so it's nuanced. And so, you see where I'm going? It's a short term. And even if you don't win this battle, you're in a process where you're building for the next battle, And that's how we win. We didn't win it took us a year to win in Shasta, but then we ultimately prevailed. It was awesome. Yes? Dave Johnson. He's with Cause of America. If you email me, you got Cause of America. Yes.
Just you can QR code that, take a couple legal flyers, pass them around, and just, here, I'll just start.
Hi.
Problem was, when you talk about the church, not every church is open for politicians. That's the problem.
Not every church is open for politicians, she says, and I agree. Right. So if the churches won't cooperate, I think you should not go to those churches. They're non-essential, if you ask me. But that's just me. On a personal note, I was a music minister for 40 years. 20 years I was in a Southern Baptist church, and then for 20 years I was a leader of a large orchestra, a huge church, Presbyterian church. I got to lead a choir conductor and everything. And I really loved that, but I had to leave in 2017 because I couldn't stand my church anymore. I had gone apostate. And it's not just my church, a lot of churches have gone apostate. I just couldn't do it anymore, so I quit in 2017, took a year off, went and joined another church. They said, why are you joining this church? And I said, well, because I looked at your doctrine and I agree with your doctrine. They said, but really I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just throwing myself up in the air. Wherever God takes me, that's where I'm going. Oh boy, look at me now. What happens when you put yourself in God's hands? Watch out. You better not just throw yourself up unless you're ready to be blown around. Boy, we'll have it blown around. It's crazy. We got to close this up on that.
If you take it home with you, give it to like-minded people that are tired of this. Okay, we only cover state of Alaska stuff at this website.
Thank you.
So anything you need, we'll bring more information and movies and stuff that's happening around the world. It's like Mike Lindell.
Did we talk to you then, when we get that?
Well, I'm trying to form a team to handle it. There's an awful lot of emails to answer for this. Okay.
We're forming a team here, yes?
We're forming a team. Okay? It's an information team. We're providing you information about everything that's going on. So we're setting it all up. We're new to this. Whoever's done stuff like this before, you sure need your help. Because it's all new. But it's our civic duty to do this. We want to keep our Constitution. We have to do these kind of things.
Somebody's got to defend the Constitution. If it's not us, we're done.
Any questions?
Yeah. When I have the big choice, ask for signature to say no. Some people say, why do we need to do that? What about the voting suck? So it's something that's very keep voting because some people really know it's not trustworthy, so they give up. So how can just small one of us to make people trust this we can have hope? That's it. I don't understand.
We can't give up hope. I'm going to share this little story about rats. They did this. Somebody shared it with me the other day, and it was fantastic. It really touched me. So these was Harvard, I think, or Princeton. No, it's not a college. It is a college, but I don't remember exactly which one of the top colleges it was. They would take rats and put them in water and let them swim until they drowned. The average was about 15 minutes for a rat. And it would give up and it would drown. The second batch, they put them in water. They let them swim almost 15 minutes before they drowned. Take them out, dry them off, and put them back in. Rest them for about a little bit, just a little bit. Just get them dry, warmed up again, and put them back in. How long do you think the rats in the second batch lasted before they drowned?
30 minutes.
Huh?
Hours. 8 hours.
Hours and hours and hours.
60 hours.
Wow.
The deduction is because they had hope.
That they would be rescued the second time.
That's our hope. Hold on to that hope. We got to make this work. All right? We have to make it work.
Well,
Jesus Christ for me.
Hope is a positive expectation that something good is going to happen to the activity. An aggressive positive. And the Bible's a little bit, well, that's what the Bible says. That's right. It's a positive, aggressive expectation that something good is going to happen to the activity. Keep it alive, people.
You heard it right. Positive expectation. It's going to happen anyway.
Hope in the future. Gives you hope in the heart.
So that's
What keeps your heart warm?
are we wrapping up?
Yeah, we're about to wrap up. I want to make an announcement, but I also wanted to answer your question just now, because I don't think hope is necessarily the best answer to that question. One of the things I was pointing out is that there are candidates, myself included, who have run for office before. I'm not a candidate today, I'm just a legislator, but having been a candidate before, I can say not all candidates are treated equally. I know that'll surprise you, but we aren't. And some of us have to get more votes than other people because fraud is going to come into our elections at a greater amount than somebody else's election. So if you're looking at a certain candidate who is maybe running against the status quo, which I have on occasion, you can expect that the status quo is going to have more incentive to influence negatively that election in lots of different ways, both legally and illegally, through fraud and otherwise, to the point where it's not uncommon to say, all right, you've got two candidates in a race, one of them is going to experience a higher amount of fraud. So if that candidate's going to win, they're going to have to win by at least 10% more votes than the other candidate just to technically win, to counteract the fraud. So please vote, and please counteract the fraud. All of the things that we deal with in politics are to answer one very simple question. And I'll put it to you this way. The Capitol building that I work in has a very strong opinion about many of you in this room. And that opinion is that what you think does not matter at all. And so, if I'm, a representative of the Capitol building, the question that I have to you is, what you think doesn't matter, change my mind. And that's what politics is. Politics is changing that mind. And there are lots of different ways to persuade those in power and government that what you think does matter. And it should matter, and constitutionally it should matter. But the Constitution is not always followed. Things don't always work the way they're supposed to. Right now we've got some pizza in the other room for those who want to stick around and are committed to being part of the team that Dave was just talking about. To move forward in advance of Dr. Frank's next visit. So if you are ready today to commit some time towards that effort and want to be a part of that team, please stick around and we're going to head next door and enjoy some pizza and talk and strategize and all those good things. I do want to thank the church again for letting us be here today. Also want to thank Dave and of course Dr. Frank and Theo is around here somewhere. And Theo as well. What was that last name?
I said a question.
A question, all right. I'll try to answer it.
Or whoever can answer. How come there's not more people here?
What was the question?
How come there's not more people here?
Yeah.
It's okay, we're Gideon's army.
I mean, the voting might drag me in.
Because we're asleep.
Threw me into this, and so I just.
Because we're asleep.
We're sleeping.
Uh-huh.
Here's the concept, okay?
I mean, where was this put out to? Where was this thrown out? To
Facebook, I saw it on Facebook.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not on Facebook.
Okay, so,
I heard it on the radio.
I heard it from a friend.
but it was advertised on the radio, and it was put on different webs, and stuff like that. We're still learning how to use media to get out the word and stuff. So we're forming groups in different areas. Here's a recommendation I do. All the time when I'm out, I go to buy groceries and stuff, I'll stand in the line and I'll look at you and we're waiting there. Wow, look at the price of meat. This is incredible. I talk to the people around me and I complain about the stuff that's going on. I want to know what they feel. Do they feel like me? And by gosh, most of the people I talk to feel like me. They're up to here with it. I think all of you are up to here with it. It's enough. We're going to have to stop it. I'm not paying for teaching kids sexual orientation from a pizza. That's my money. I don't want that. If I was in Anchorage, I'm from the Valley. I'm not giving them money to go mail this stuff so we can get set back. We can't afford to lose it. The school needs more money and you're wasting it on stamps. What kind of management is that? I get irate. And we're going to have to get irate. We don't have a chance. We don't stand a chance. They got to know we're pissed.
I got another answer. I'm sorry.
I have an answer, but go ahead, you first.
So I would answer the reason why there aren't more people here is because it's a fledgling team and it needs to develop a little bit, because if you were promoting this event as a group of people rather than just a few people who are working day and night as it is, I think you can get the word out a lot better. And that's why one of the 7 people you need to have on your team is a promoter. Somebody who that's what they do. They concentrate on promotion. And when I got a radio interview, that was helpful. That brought in a few people and people, but there's a skill to that. There are people who are good at promoting, and God gives us what we need. And so one of you is a promoter, and God is giving you that gift. One of you is a leader. One of you is a data guy. One of you is stick in the mud. You have different You have different skills, and you need that team to be functioning, and that's why you'll have more people, I think. Okay? I just think you're a fledgling team, and I don't want to be bad on you because I'm not. I've been doing this constantly for 3 years. This is good. This is a good turnout for my second visit. This is about par for the course. Next time I'm here, this place will be overflowing. If you form a team now and you start working, it's not free. You have to earn it. But I wouldn't be surprised if this was overflowing next time, which would be awesome, right? And it's not about me. It's about you. We won in Shasta County, not because of smarty pants, but because there were 350 people there that were storming the building every 2 weeks and organized. And they built that. It took us about a year to get to that. But it works. Okay, that's my answer to that question.
I will add to that answer by saying...
Lose the mic. That just muffles your voice.
Hear me better without a mic?
It's better.
All right, good. I don't like mics anyways.
How do we get past the assembly when they don't?
How do we what?
All right, let's answer the first question first. So here's my answer. You don't contrast knowns versus unknowns very well. I mean, you try maybe and you predict the future, but we're contrasting 30 people here today, and there were more earlier. What are we contrasting to? Well, maybe there could have been more in some other, reality. The contrast that I have, and this is maybe just me, is how many more people are here today than there were in 1996, which was the first election that I was involved in that was stolen. And I see 30 more people here today than were there in 1996 when I started caring about this issue. And so every election that I've been involved in, this has been a recurring issue. It didn't start, yesterday. It didn't start in 2000. It started a long time ago. It was the 2000 election that the Democrat Party sued the state of Alaska elections because the numbers in the presidential race didn't make a lot of sense. And the response that they got in court, they took it to the Alaska Supreme Court, was, we are not going to give you the information to try and make sense of math that doesn't make sense because it's proprietary information about how your votes were counted. That was the answer in 2000. It's been a problem for a long time. So I look at what happened in 2000 and 2002. Every time I keep looking back, I see more people in the audience. I'm happy to see that. That's just my perspective because it's been a lot of years of encouraging people to take stock and responsibility for elections, and it's been hard. It's been really, really hard. And there's been, I'm certainly not the only one that's been doing that. There's people doing it a lot longer than I have. But I look at it and I say, it looked like it was impossible, about 5 years ago. Compared to 5 years ago, this is amazing. This is actually what we need to have happening. And some steps need to happen before other steps. One of the steps that I think is kind of important in this whole process is if any of you have ever made the mistake of showing up to a town hall and applauding a political person just because they were elected or because they belonged to your political party, even though they were literally voting against you and taking away your rights and violating your property rights, stop doing that. I think that's also one of those things that needs to stop. I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Doug, knowing what you know now, how many blue states are really red?
How many blue states are really red? So for example, I didn't show you these data, but in Pennsylvania, remember I told you I got the full history since 1900 to present? I showed that and I could show you the graphs if I still had a projector going up. In 1996, in Montgomery County, another 50,000, different than the one I'm talking about tonight. Another 50,000 people were added to the voter rolls in 1996, and they were all at 450,000. So it surged. You get the idea.
Surge and purge.
And no, they didn't purge them. They added 50,000 people, and none of them voted. I was studying this over history. It was weird. They added 50,000 people, and none of them voted in 1996. None of them voted in 1998. None of them voted in 2000. I was like, something's wrong with my software here, because how do you add 50,000 new voters to the rolls and none of them vote? This is confusing to me. It was after MVRA, when the states were encouraged to put people in the rolls. 2002, 10,000 of them voted. 2004, 20,000. 2006, 30,000. 2008, 40,000. 2010, all 50,000 of them voted. It was within like 3 of the 50,000 voted in 2010. But they all were added then. And basically, what did I just prove? I just proved that somebody primed the pump, and then a long game, and then later phased them in gradually. That's how you convert a red county to a purple county to a blue county, and everybody believes it. And I can't tell you how many counties I've been in where I've been able to do those kind of analyses, and the people say to me, "Oh yeah, Dr. Frank, it's those crazy Californians that are moving in here, and they're converting." You know why they believe that? Because that's what the media is telling them, and they are buying the propaganda. But when you do the analysis, you find out, no, the people leaving California are the conservatives that don't want anything to do with that place anymore. And they're conservative. They're bringing the conservative votes in, actually. But it's being overwhelmed by this gradual migration. It's a long game. In 2006, Soros was on TV. And I've seen this with my own eyes. He started what's called the Secretaries of State's Project. And he said in an interview, "I am going to own every Secretary of State in this country by 2020. And he's nearly there. It's called, 2006 is called the Secretaries of State Project. So what we are up against is a sea of money. We are not going to win this battle by out fundraising them. We're not going to win that way. We have to fight with what we have, and that is our voice and our hands and our feet. And we have to stand up against that sea of money. He didn't just stop at the Secretaries of States. He's been buying AGs all over the country. Where is all this money? I'm in Ohio. In Ohio, we just passed a constitutional amendment. Blew me away. In Ohio, we had issue 1. It said it makes it a constitutional right to an abortion up to birth. In our state, it is now a constitution. And yet, our state was the first state to pass the heartbeat bill. Okay? Our state is where Janet Porter is, who's led the fight for the heartbeat bill in 12 other states. We're the leaders in that, and it overwhelmingly passes. My state is the one where we have county after county that are what we call sanctuary counties, where it's illegal to have abortions, where the counties have made the law to make it illegal. Yet somehow we passed issue 1 in our state that makes it a constitutional right. And you know what? Tens of millions of dollars was flowing into this from outside of our state to manipulate this election. That's why,
Arabella group here in Alaska through their venture this one.
And you're up against huge amounts of money.
Yeah.
I don't know, as I travel the country, I've just come into contact with some things that just blow me away. I had no idea. I was driving across North Dakota with my host. They were driving in the car. And I grew up on an Angus ranch. I know agriculture pretty good. And we're driving along, and it's like corn, soybeans, corn, beets, carrot. You know, you can see these beautiful fields, miles and miles of beautiful, amazing, productive farmland. And suddenly it stopped. And I just we kept driving. It's like after like 5 minutes of not seeing a single field, I'm like, why are these fields fallow? I'm confused. And so I asked I figured maybe some kind of experiment, or maybe they cycle them every 7 years. Heck, I don't know. So I asked my host, I said, why are all these fields fallow? You know what his answer was? These are the lands bought by Bill Gates. This is real. They're buying land that's supposed to be making food, and they're not making food. They're buying land that's supposed to be producing oil and natural gas, and not producing oil and natural gas. They're putting in windmills in the middle of lobster beds so that in Maine, they can't, all the lobstermen are going out of business.
And the lobster will die too, because the holes, they can't take the the ultrasound.
Yeah, right. Yes. Why are they deliberately destroying our economy? Why are they deliberately destroying our country? You know, people tell me all the time, if you have any influence with Trump, which I do, they'll say, we want you to tell him to stop promoting the vaccine. Okay? He never promoted the vaccine. He always said, it's your choice. But he was naive. He didn't realize that they would use the pressure techniques to take it. He's very proud of Operation Warp Speed. You know why? They were shutting our country down. He said there were 40% of people that would never leave their house again until there was a vaccine, until there was a jab.
He gave them an option.
And he gave them a way out of their house. And he made it their choice. And who are the people that were rushing? We want to be first, we want to be first, okay? Those are the ones that would never have come out of their house again. He had to choose between the lesser of two evils. Do I not do anything, or do I do something fast? He's very proud. He stopped them from shutting down our country. That's one thing. And the other thing is I did an event with Patrick Byrne recently. He and I are good friends. And he said, the only reason that we haven't lost our country already in this color revolution is because we have guns. It's because we have guns. That's the only reason. And that's why I'm saying to you, get them out. Carry them every day and get your militias in gear. It's your constitutional duty. And the more that is prevalent, the slower they can move forward. And don't sell your stupid property to the Chinese. Okay? Keep it. I was in Surrey County, northern North Carolina. That's where Mayberry is, you know. Surrey County, North Carolina. And as I was leaving, I was saying, this is one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. I might want to retire here. And my driver said, no, you couldn't retire here. I said, why not? He says, because no one here will sell you any property. Good. Why not? Because it's been carried down for centuries, and we will not sell it to outsiders. That's why it's beautiful and nice, and we're not going to... And I said, come on, I'm a nice guy. Can't you just nope, nobody will do it. We won't sell. And anybody who tries to sell to outsiders, the neighbors, they all buy the property. They won't let it happen. They keep it in-house. But we greedy Americans, we sell off our property to other countries. It's crazy. Don't do that. This is our country. Don't give it away. Anyway, I'm rambling now. But I have just had my eyes open like I never dreamed. The child trafficking that's going on in this country, the drug trafficking, the immigration debacle. I know. All over. I know, everywhere.
Child Protective Services.
So we deserve judgment. We deserve judgment. You know, maybe this would be a good thing to finish on before we eat pizza. Do you remember when David went to fight Goliath? In the story of David and Goliath. He didn't go there to fight Goliath. He went there to give his brothers lunch. He arrives and he discovers he's in the middle of this interesting situation. There's this huge oaf out in the field insulting God and insulting his nation. And so he's confused. And he goes to his brothers and he says, why are you not doing anything? Get out there and take care of business. This guy's insulting our God and insulting our nation. And what did his brothers say to him? Go take care of the sheep. Yeah. Who are you to tell us? Okay? But he didn't listen. He went out and he stood before Goliath, and what did he say? He didn't say, Bub, I'm going to whip you, right? He said, this battle is between you and God. The battle is the Lord's, and today he's going to deliver you into my hands. And he took out his slingshot and he threw the stone, and God delivered that stone. And God's miracle won the day that day. And then David cut Goliath's head off. Then what happened? Then the children of Israel rose and chased the Philistines out of the land. Okay? So all we need are two things. We need David's, and we need a miracle. And we don't... You have to stand up and you have to use the skill God has given you, whatever it is, whether it's a slingshot or data or promotion or stick in the mud or whatever it is. You got to use the gift God has given you, and you have to be that David. And then we have to pray and we have to count on God to win this. If we don't win this, then God is going to allow us to be judged, which he did that's the whole story of Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the Bible. 450 years of Israel's history, and then God allowed Babylon to take over Israel because they didn't repent. So we are either headed for 70 years of judgment, in which case I think we've lost our country, or we're going to repent. And, you know, I often think of myself like a Jonah. I'm headed to Nineveh, and I'm spreading the gospel, and I'm praying that the country will repent. And we only had Nineveh had 40 days. And they repented, and God redeemed them. If we can, like in Chronicles, if we will humble ourselves and pray, if we will return to God, if we will do that, then God can do the miracle.
It's possible we may have to suffer more.
But it's possible we're going to have to be judged. It's possible we're going to have 70 years. But regardless, we need to stand, and we need to do what we're called to do, and it's God's job to decide what happens after that. Because it's His battle.
And David was a man after God's own heart.
Yes.
And I mean, you look at David, and that's who to follow, because look what David's life was all about. I mean, it was like everything.
Yes.
But he still was after God's
Right.
own heart. And you can tell it in his psalms and his prayers.
And so we need to be after God's. And I think in the end, that's really where we're at.
Yeah.
We've lost our way as a nation. We're confused. We don't know the difference between an innie and an outie. I joke about it. But we're so confused, and we're depraved. We deserve God's judgment. We deserve to be wiped off of the face of the planet. Okay. But I don't, people say, thanks for fighting for our country, Dr. Frank. I'm not really. I'm not fighting for this country. This country is depraved. I'm fighting for the country that covenanted with God. I'm fighting for our relationship with our Heavenly Father. That country is what I'm fighting for, and I think we can resurrect that, and I think and that's what has to be. But if we lose, then we fought the right fight, and then but it's in God's hands whether we win or not. And that's a nice, very rewarding position for me to be in. I don't have to win this. I just have to fight as hard as I can and use the gifts God has given me, and then trust Him for the miracle. Amen. That's what I got to do. So anyway, maybe that's a good start.
All right, you guys all know what to do at this point. You need to like, share, click that bell to be notified every time we go live. This is on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Rumble. Only live when we're live on our website at Politadick.com. And while you're there, click that support button, help us grow, help expand, make it to more events just like this one. It is folks like you, supporters like you, that made it possible for me to be here today. Otherwise, I can't afford it. The Biden economy, just like everybody else, is destroying our nation, and trying to keep up with the ever-increasing inflation is always a difficult thing to accomplish. I would like to give a big shout out to our two biggest free speech platforms that are out there, to X, formerly known as Twitter, and to Rumble. Even though I have just a handful of followers on those pages compared to Facebook and YouTube, the watching audience is phenomenal. You guys are beating everybody by triple digits all the way around. If not 50% more people are there to 100% more, depending on, or 200, 300% on which platform you're looking at. But X and Twitter, between the two of them, you guys were phenomenal today. You made Facebook look like a joke that they've turned themselves into. Almost 6,000 followers there, and can't even reach 1% on it, but not even 1% of those on the other two channels that I'm giving a shout out for, X and Rumble. And you guys got 3 times the audience that was ever seen on Facebook all the way around. So thank you guys all for being here again. Help support us. Go to our website, click that support button. Send us some stars if you're on Facebook, always greatly appreciated. And like, share, subscribe so you get notified every time we go live. That's how you'll keep up to date on the latest and greatest that our mainstream media refuses to show you. You guys all have yourself a great rest of your weekend, and we'll see you the next time.